as usual, is residents' concerns. If anyone has a concern, please come to the microphone. And if anybody else has a concern, please line up after the microphone so we don't have to wait for people to move. Hello.
So I have two little things I'd like to talk about.
On an IBM card.
Yes. Oh, I can push the button. Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Okay, I have two things I'd like to talk about, and I made notes so that I can try to be focused and, and stay right on topic.
So we allow 3 minutes.
Okay,
so you know.
Well, I should be able to finish in less. The first thing I'd like to talk about is how much I'm looking forward to the Bruce Freeman Rail Trails Bridge over Route 2 opening.
I'm sorry, could you just tell us your name?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm John Covert, Flag Road.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'm looking forward to so that's where my time started. I'm looking forward to the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail over the bridge over Route 2 opening. I do a lot of walking. The thing that I'd like to see happen related to that is near Weatherby Street, where Weatherby Street meets Route 2A, Great Road. I'm hoping that a painted crosswalk could be added, because I think there's going to be a lot of pedestrian traffic there, and there's a safety concern there. That's right by the McDonald's and Filio's restaurant and Weatherby Road, and so I think you're going to have a lot of traffic there that you haven't had before. So I'd hope to see a painted crosswalk there, possibly even with one of those signs in the middle of it. I walk a minimum of 10,000 steps a day. And I've done as many as 33,500 in a day. My 7-day average is currently 13,668 steps for the last 7 days, and for a year it's 12,200. I do a lot of walking. I frequently park at Alewife on Saturdays and walk around Cambridge. On Sundays, because I always go into Brookline, I frequently park there and do a lot of walking as well as eating at restaurants there. And I walk a lot on the Assabet Rail Trail. And today I walked for 5 hours on the Assabet Rail Trail to Maynard. And I parked my Tesla there, as I have many times in the past, and as frequently, as recently as several times in the past week, and it has never cost me anything to use the charger there. And I was a little bit surprised, although I had a hint that this might be happening, to receive a bill for $10.16 today for that which was free yesterday. I used 34 kilowatt hours. And I see that the town has decided to charge 30 cents per kilowatt hour. So I have a charger at home, which I use as well. So that $10.16 that I used while I was out exercising would have only cost me $8.50 at home. And it would be free in Brookline and free at the Alewife parking station in Cambridge and free in many places.
1 minute left. So you know.
What? Yes, okay. I'm definitely going to finish in 1 minute. And in the town of Concord, where they only charge $1.20 per hour, except there's some peak pricing there. But on weekends, and if you plan your time, they only charge $1.20 an hour there, which is much less than the $2 roughly that it works out at the current arrangement there. I'm glad you charge by the kilowatt hour, not by the time there, because if two cars are using that charger at the same time, you get a lot less electricity. So at least you're doing it the fair way for what can happen there. But I would like to point out that in 4 3/4 hours, I got the same amount of charge as I could have gotten for 28 cents, not 30 cents, 28 cents per kilowatt hour at the commercial charger operated by Tesla in Littleton. In 10 minutes, I could have gotten the same amount of charge that I got in almost 5 hours here. So there's a much better value for dollar, and I think 30 cents, charging 30 cents an hour, I'm sorry, kilowatt hour is a little bit high, considering that I believe the town gets a pretty good break on its electricity with all the solar that it has.
So your time's up. But I understand. We are discussing a related thing tonight, and just so you know, we are thinking of places to put fast chargers, which are like the Tesla superchargers. Anybody else need to make a comment in the room? And Justin, can you call on the people online, please?
Absolutely. And we have one call-in user, if you're ready for that.
Yes.
All right, go ahead, call the music.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, this is Karen Acton here. And I would like to say that it's not about the item on the agenda, but I do feel a need to say that there's been no discussion about creating a framework around the liability relative to giving away sewer capacity when the town has the legal obligation to provide it to others. And it's a multi-million-dollar liability that we're talking about. And I'm saying it now because last time there was no public comment taken at that time. And relative to the person that just spoke, I love him moving forward with this information, and I love that you didn't cut him off. I felt like you didn't even give me a chance to finish. I had 3 more words in my things last time, and I appreciate when you don't cut people off, and I hope it's not specific to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I don't see anyone else. Okay, we'll move on. I just have one update today. At our next meeting, which is on April 28th because of Patriots Day, the week before, among other things, we will take 5-minute comments from anyone who has put in a citizen's petition to allow them to tell us what the citizen's petition is about. We have 8, 10, something, 10, 12. So anyway, we'll allocate an hour for that so people can tell us what their citizens' petitions are about. That's all I had. Mr. Manager, your update?
None for me, thanks.
And anybody like to have a member minute? Dean.
Thank you. So last week, I was pleased to be able to attend the 2022 Spring Manufacturing Summit, which was held over at Minuteman Tech. It was co-sponsored by Mass Hire, Middlesex Community College, Minuteman Technical Institute, and the town of Acton. And the point behind this was to try to combine all of these agencies and others to look to see what we can do for workforce development, especially in the manufacturing and blue-collar industry. It was an excellent session. There was good representation there from a number of employers, including notably Hartz Corporation, that presently have 30 vacancies if anybody is looking for work. And it was all kicked off and largely put together by our Economic Development Director, Julia Pierce-Onos, and she did a great job. And I just wanted to relay that to the town manager, that I think she's doing an excellent job, and this is a nice, innovative thing to think about, looking at the long-range impact of the economic development and employees. It was also interesting that 2 of the stumbling blocks for employee hiring, especially in the manufacturing sector, are things we talk about here all the time: lack of transportation and lack of affordable housing. So it's all related, but Mr. Manager, I'm very impressed with Julie and the work that she's doing.
Thank you. I'll pass that along to her. And you're not the first to say that, but I appreciate hearing it from you. Thanks a lot.
Any other member have something I'd like to say? Jim?
Okay. So the arrival of spring means the arrival of invasive removal season. And we're going to kick things off with an event at Gardner Field, the playground that is now being totally redone to be universally accessible. Starting at 10 in the morning on Saturday, volunteers, anyone hearing, is welcome to help us remove the invasive burning bush plants that are at the entrance to Gardner. Bring a saw, bring clothes that are appropriate for working outside, and we'll have a great time.
Great. Image.
Thank you. I'll be very quick. So this weekend, the Acton Housing and Climate Justice Group met and did a lot of work reaching out to renters, and just wanted to thank everyone's efforts in creating the hotline and the email, because one of their biggest goals with their outreach was letting people know of these renter resources that we had compiled as a town. So just wanted to commend them, and also just really give thanks to everyone here who really helped with that effort. A lot of renters did not know this was a resource, and learning about it was really cool. And so hopefully we can continue to make these resources available. Thanks.
Thank you. And Fran, did you have it? Okay, we'll move on to our public hearing tonight, and I will read the legal notice. The Acton Select Board will hold a public hearing on April 4th, 2022 at 7:35 p.m., rescheduled from February 7th, 2022 in the Francis Faulkner Hearing Room, 204 at Acton Town Hall, 472 Main Street, and remotely by video and call-in on the application of Natural Grid to install and maintain approximately 200 feet of 4-inch plastic from the existing 4-inch plastic at 76 Powdermill Road to install approximately 100 feet of 2-inch plastic in the driveway at 76 Powdermill Road from the new 4-inch plastic installation. From a computer, enter the link to actonmad.gov/meeting/BOS, or from a telephone, dial 646-876-9923 and enter the webinar ID 503-918-785. Telephone users may dial *9 to request to speak after joining the meeting. Computer and app users may use the raise hand feature to request to speak. Justin, I believe we have a representative from National Grid with us.
Yes, and they can speak, they just need to unmute.
Okay. So the representative from National Grid, you can speak, you just have to unmute. I think you already, I saw you raise your hand, you're already allowed to speak. I think you have to hit *6 to unmute, if I'm not mistaken. We can't unmute you. There you go.
Oh, yes, thank you.
So if your computer is on, you're going to want to turn down the volume.
Yes, I did that, thank you. I don't know why I think it may audio work, but thank you for having us and putting us on the agenda.
So please go ahead and let us know what National Grid is requesting.
National Grid would like to install and maintain approximately 250 feet of 4-inch plastic in High Street from the existing 4-inch plastic to 76 Powdermill Road, and to install approximately 100 feet of 2-inch plastic in the driveway to the water treatment plant from the new 4-inch plastic installation.
Oh, okay. So the existing 4-inch plastic is actually on Powdermill Road, and you're running it up High Street and then into the water plant.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. Does any member of the board have any questions or comments? Dean.
I believe, although I did not have a chance to access it, I believe that there was an email sent from Chris Allen from the Water District explaining the need for this, and if anybody's got that, or if we could just get a precise of what he said, that would be great.
I didn't see that before the meeting unless it came in late.
Yes, Lisa put it in our packet moments ago.
Okay.
So I'm happy to describe what it says. So it's a brief note from Chris Allen. Boy, it used to be here. This thing's been running away. Basically, yeah, they already use natural gas at the water plant. There's a heat phase in the treatment, and this is a reroute. It's not intended to increase the amount of gas going to the treatment plant. Just replace it through a different line.
Okay.
And he said, other than working closely with them on the schedule, he didn't have any comments about it.
Okay. Anybody else on the board have a comment or question? Any member of the public have a comment or a question? So I see someone coming to the microphone here in the room. We'll take her first, and then we'll take the online question.
Do I push this?
No, it's already pressed.
Okay. Judy Hodge of High Street in Acton. And I wasn't sure just what this 100 Powdermill Road project was. So it sounds like it's already using gas, but just wanted to remind everyone that we don't want to keep supporting new gas infrastructure, that we're just putting in things that will not be possible in the future and that are harming us in the present. I guess this is already a done deal in terms of they're already using natural gas, but we want to move away from it.
Thank you very much. And Justin, I think there's one person online.
Yes, we have Judith Aaronstein. Go ahead.
Yes, hi, Judith Aaronstein, Beverly Lane in Acton, the parking lot is out front. And I also didn't realize what this was for and that it is, already in use using gas. And I did have a question though. Jim said that it's for treating some of the treatment process, correct?
Jim's nodding yes.
Are there other alternatives that were explored about how the sewage gets treated with heat besides using natural gas? That's just a question.
So this is water, first of all, not.
Or water.
But Jim, do you know the answer to that?
No, I have scheduled a meeting with Chris Allen to talk about their carbon footprint in general and hope to explore these kinds of questions with the Water District.
Okay, it just seems if at the very least we can just see if there's other alternatives. Yeah, but the pipeline is there. I hadn't realized what it was either, so thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to comment or ask a question? Okay, seeing none, I would take a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
So Dean moves and Fran seconds. Any final discussion? I'll take a vote. All in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
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 Any opposed? So it's unanimous to close the public hearing. Any final discussion on the part of the board before we vote? Jim? Oh, I thought you were. No? Okay, we'll go ahead and vote. All in favor of approving the gas main installation up High Street to the water plant, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? It passes unanimously. Thank you very much, National Grid.
Thank you. Thank you very much and have a good evening. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, the next couple of items on the agenda are sewer commissioner items. So the first is, had come up at our education session on the sewers, and we discussed wanting to make discuss and make a decision if we wanted to have tiered pricing in the privilege fees. Right now we have just a two-tier pricing, 2 bedrooms and under is $20,000 privilege fee, and 3 bedrooms and more is $30,000. And we had an applicant wanting to connect a few weeks ago with a 1-bedroom accessory dwelling unit. And we decided to discount her privilege fee ahead of this meeting, but we're wondering, should we make that systematic? And one of what we did in her case was to have a $15,000 privilege fee for 1 bedroom, and then we were saying that possibly the tiered system could add $7,500 per bedroom. So it'd be $2,250 for 2 bedroom, $30,000 for 3 bedroom, which is exactly the same as what we have now, $3,750 for 4 bedroom, and $4,500 for 5 bedroom. So I'll just open that up for comments from the board. Dean.
I think a tiered system makes a lot of sense, especially where we look at the increasing push towards making really, really large houses in town with many bedrooms. I think this is an opportunity not to make revenue for the town, but just to help manage that process and manage the amount of effluent that's going to be going into our sewer treatment plant. So I'd be in favor of such a tiered system. I don't know how the economics would work out. I'm sure that somebody in the finance department has kicked that around a bit, but it seems reasonable to me.
Other comments? Jim?
Yeah, it makes sense to me to have a tiered system, to have the costs be in proportion to the amount of expected, effluent that they're adding to our system, and the best proxy we have for that is the number of bedrooms. But Dean asks a fine rhetorical question, which I'll ask as a real question. Has there been any staff analysis of the impact of this potential change going forward? Would it increase or decrease our expected revenue?
I think we've discussed and understood that this would maybe simplify the process for people and certainly for the sewer commissioners, but we haven't done a detailed analysis of how it would impact I guess it would be future because it wouldn't impact anything in the past. So no, to answer your question, no.
My observation is that the two-bedroom fee would be slightly higher than it is now, and that we'd be adding additional fees on top of the, for larger rooms for 4 or 5. So this seems to be a system that would increase probably overall, unless there's some really large number of, one-bedroom units that are, expected in the future. So I'm okay with this the way it is. I'd also be fine with the system that that slid a little bit down to try to make it match the impact, to maybe make the two-bedroom fee be the same as it has been. But I don't have a strong feeling about that. Just a back of the envelope sense.
Yes, I think of this as being pretty close to revenue neutral. I think overall, Jim, I think you're right. It probably increases the fees slightly, but occasionally, for example, with an AHA development, although we waive those fees, but where we have other, say a powder mill place-like development or others where there are a large number of one-bedrooms, that would reduce those fees a little bit. It's also, we discussed it being fairer for accessory dwelling units. So, I think it's not a big thing. We could make an exception for two-bedroom, but I think having the increment by bedroom makes it simpler for everybody and easier to explain. One question in my mind, should we stop with, I don't think there's going to be too many of these, but stop with a number at $45,000 for 5 bedrooms or more, or have it increase $7,500 if there's a 6-bedroom house somewhere? Dean?
I would just keep marching the numbers up.
Okay. Any other?
I would agree with that. I think the tiered system is the way to go. Maybe charging a little less for the 1-bedroom and going up incrementally from there.
So are you saying that $15,000 is too high for you?
I have that $10,000 stuck in my head for a 1-bedroom, but.
So my feeling often in a 1-bedroom, and it's certainly not always the case, but we can't charge by the number of people that are actually there. But I think often a 1-bedroom is going to have 2 people, and a 2-bedroom is going to have 3 people. And so I think that this is quite fair. It's, probably close to $7,500 per person.
Maybe a little less than 1,500, but.
The
I mean,
15,000.
15,000, yeah.
Okay. Do you have any comments?
Yeah, I think that, I think I'm okay with 15,000, but I would also be okay if I think we went a little bit lower. The thing I was gonna ask was, would this be for any, like, for example, like new constructions with X amount of bathrooms? And would this same rule also apply to like existing units where like an extra bathroom is added?
So bathrooms don't count, bedrooms count.
Oh, so it's bedrooms, okay, so
And-
based on the, okay.
So, and yes, a redevelopment does increase the privilege. So
Okay.
if someone, for example, had a two-bedroom originally and paid $20,000, then they have to pay more if they put on an addition with two bedrooms.
Oh, okay, got you. Is there a reason why it's based on bedrooms and not bathrooms?
I don't know, but I think bedrooms often correlate to the number of people more.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, got you. Yeah, so that's all I had. But to Fran's point, if we want to reconsider what it is for one bedroom, I think that's okay. But I think 1,500 sounds fair for like one bedroom and then increase incrementally.
Jim?
Since you mentioned the frequency of having two people in a one-bedroom and three people in a two-bedroom, one way to think of this would be $14,000 for the one-bedroom, and just go up by $7,000 per bedroom. So that'd be 14, 21, 28, 35, and so on, to the higher heights for the big mansions.
Yeah, we could do that. I'd like the three-bedroom case to be the same.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we could do 14,000 and go up by 8.
Mm-hmm.
We could do 10,000 and go up by 10.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 10,000 and up by 10 is evenly 10,000 per bedroom.
Mm-hmm. What was your previous?
14,000 and go up by 8. So it would be 20,
Oh, right. Yeah,
22,
yeah.
30, 3,800.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That works for me.
So that's a tiny bit lower. Is that okay with you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I will take comments from the public first in the room.
Thank you. Alyssa Nickel from School Street, where we have one bathroom, but 4 people. I would caution you not to go down to 10,000 because you're going from 20,000 to 10,000. So that's cutting it in half, which is pretty significant. I think starting at 14 or 15,000 is reasonable. I would also caution you to stop at 4 bedrooms rather than continuing to add another $7,000 or $8,000 for each additional bedroom, because honestly, we all know that family sizes are getting smaller in this country, and like people are having fewer children, and most people that have those size houses have them for home offices, sometimes 2 now that a lot of people are working from home.
Thank you. Anybody else in the room? Justin, can you call on the online people, please?
Yes, we have one call-in user.
Hi, this is Sarah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, so I'm a little bit confused because what happens to the 30,000? Is that only for brand new houses? Or is this one that you're talking about right now for everybody? And I thought that the $30,000 is pretty well justified. And secondly, before I make what I said, I'd like to get some answers on that. It seems like this is important enough that we would see this in writing, and I haven't seen it in writing, and it hasn't been posted on documents that I can find. So I'm hoping that you can wait, and so because we have people that do a finance analysis, and we haven't seen it. So I'd like those answers before I say what I think. Yes, so the 2 questions: what happened to the 30,000 that's being justified? Was that just a new building? And then can we see this in writing before you vote?
So I think it might be good to move forward today if we can move forward. But I'm not sure whether you were on in the beginning of this discussion. Right now, we have a 2-tiered system $20,000 for 2 bedrooms or fewer and $30,000 for 3 bedrooms or more. We're just proposing to make this more tiers, and the number of 3 bedrooms is exactly the same. So the current proposal on the table is to have $14,000 for 1 bedroom, $22,000 for 2 bedroom, $30,000 for 3 bedroom, $38,000 for 4 bedroom, and $46,000 for 5 bedroom.
Okay, I like the higher cost for the higher building, not higher number of bedrooms, and I don't see it needs to be in writing, that's all it is. And so now I just really want to, because I feel like this encourages and enables building, and so I get back to my original comment about getting a framework for deciding when to start giving out, or, limiting, giving out the privilege fees, or allowing the privilege fees. And so I feel like that needs to be discussed before you start on the price of what it is. I feel like just deciding on the price to enable one person today is, and also, by the way, I thought that if you're doing a lot of work to help this one person build an ADU, and this is the kind of help that the apartment builders need, is advocating for their interests. And so I feel like we do a lot of work advocating for builders, advocating for people who want to increase the size of the population, when we're not even taking care of the people over there right now. I feel like this is reasonable, but I feel like it really needs to have the framework for the liability, millions of dollars in liability. These dollars will go into, I'm almost done, these dollars will go into the sewer funds, not the town coffers, and yet the liability will be for the whole town as a whole. So I feel like I would think that people would be much more outraged, I hope Dean would be, as a conservative, as I feel like he is, that we're talking about giving away sewer capacity and adding liability for the entire town.
Thank you. I just want to be clear. First of all, the woman with the accessory dwelling unit, we already decided, and that's done. It's not affected by this decision. The other thing, excuse me. And then secondly, this doesn't change the framework of doing anything, right? It just changes the number of tiers in the price of the privilege fee. Right, and we're more or less required to allow people that are within the sewer district to connect, and we need a pricing for that. So, okay. I don't see any other people wanting to speak. Any final discussion before we talk about a motion? I don't see any, and we did hear a comment saying that we should cap it. Is there sentiment on the board to cap it, and if so, at what level? So I do know that we are building 5-bedroom houses in town. Maybe they're intended as offices. Maybe they're intended to have, grandparents living there. I don't know. But in any case, the house has the capability of having someone have, a large family or extra relatives stay there, or whatever their circumstance is. And so I think that the pricing should, be reflect accordingly. So the last thing we talked about was not capping it. Is that we want to continue with that?
I would not cap it, because I think you get in these really large houses with multiple bedrooms. Conceivably, as time goes on, we could be in a situation where people might be, and if zoning changes, people could be subdividing these houses and making them into duplexes. So all of those bedrooms could be used. So I think we should have no cap on that.
Okay. So I think that what we've talked about on the table is, and I would take a motion for this to change the privilege fees to start at $14,000 for a 1-bedroom unit and increase by $8,000 for each additional bedroom with no cap.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any final discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion as read, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. The next item is a request from Parker Street Apartments to connect to the sewer. Mr. Levine is here. And I'm.
What
I'm
was the
told-
name?
He's here in the room. Sorry, Justin.
Oh, excellent.
I'm having a conversation with the, no, please sit, and you can, and turn on the microphone. And Lou, I'm told you want something displayed? Is that
Yes.
right? And Justin, do you know what to display for Mr. Levine?
I believe so. I have it up here. So this is for the Acton Historical Commission,
No,
Archaeological,
this is for,
Archaeological Bylaw presentation?
no, this is for item 5. The
Oh, okay.
Parker Street Apartment.
I've got that too. One moment.
We have the right thing up for you?
It'll be up there in a
Okay,
moment.
excellent.
But Lou, you can go ahead and introduce yourself
Sure.
and begin to tell us what you're asking.
Yeah, hi, my name is Lou Levine. I represent the owners of 68 Parker Street. We have been discussing for a number of months with town staff and particularly with the Affordable Housing Committee, request for a waiver.
One second, please, Lou. It's on the Zoom, but not displaying in the room. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please go ahead.
All right.
Sorry about the interruption.
We've been requesting consideration by the Sewer Commission / the Board of Selectmen, the Select Board, to consider allowing Parker Street Apartments to tie in to the sewer district. Parker Street Apartments have extremely low rents. They're, right now, the rents for a one-bedroom are approximately $1,100 a month, and for a two-bedroom, approximately $1,250. The tenants pay electricity. All heat, et cetera, is electricity, not gas. And in the summer, that runs about $75 to $90 a month, and in the winter, $160 to $200 a month. When you determine rent, you add utilities that the tenants pay. So if we add those into the rents, right now, the folks who are living at these apartments are paying between 40% and 50% of AMI. As I think the board knows, when we talk about affordable for 40Bs or inclusionary zoning or things like that, we're talking about 80% of AMI. So by way of example, at 80% of AMI, for a one-bedroom apartment with a household size of 2, it would be based on 2021 numbers, but I don't think it's going to change all that much this year. $2,021 per month, which is shown on that chart, was done by MCO Associates. And a two-bedroom, again, they assume a family size of 3, which I think goes along with the conversation you just had about determining sewer usage. The 80% of AMI would be 2273. So when we compare that to 60%, it's approximately, in both situations, about $500 more, okay, than the AMI would be if this was just a 40B or inclusionary zoning. There's a treatment plant that's in the process of failing at the site right now. There are 76 units, 24 of which are two-bedroom, 52 of which are one-bedroom. When I first reached out to John and then the ACHC, when we computed, and I guess timing is everything, when we computed what the betterment would be, we used a $20,000 number per apartment, and that came out to approximately $1,520,000. If I do what you just did tonight, that would be reduced by about $320,000, okay, but I'm just...
$1,256,000.
What?
$1,256,000.
Oh, you did it right? Okay. All right. All right, so But in our discussions in the memo that you have from the ACHC, what we've agreed to, again, subject to the board's approval, is to restrict for 10 years all the units to 60% of AMI. And then going after that to restrict for 30 years, 10% of the units, or 8, a little bit more than 10%, so that they could be counted right from the beginning on the SHI. So the net benefit to the town would be you would get 8 units on the SHI. That would be, the restriction would have to be approved by DHCD. And that's a condition that we agreed to with the ACHC, not that we say we're going to do it, but that it would be accepted on the SHI. And 10 of the for 10 years, the units would be capped at 60%, including those that eventually, would be at 80%. Doesn't mean that they would go to 80%. As the board is aware, one of the reasons that are in the sewer the bylaw to waive privilege plea is simply providing a health benefit such as affordable housing, et cetera. And I think this provides substantial, affordable housing at a very low number. This is, and I don't mean to be in any kind of negative or way, but this is what we're all trying in this state to do, to have workforce housing. And with all due respect to the 40B complexes that built, I know they have 1s and 2s and they have to have 10% 3s, but when you look at the Avalons and stuff like that, I don't really think that's workforce housing, and this really is. When we were discussing it with the ACHC, one of the members did like the equation between 60% and 80%, and it's about $500 a month, and I think he rounded it down. But when you do the extrapolation, the amount before the reduction, Mr. Chairman, equals or well exceeded over the 10 years what the privilege fee was being waived. So it allows the town to help us to subsidize it. We've worked very diligently, with the ACHC. They had some good ideas. We started out one place where it was just a request to limit or to restrict 10%, and the ACHC negotiated it substantially more, and we're willing to go along with that. These folks have owned these buildings for, I think, 30 plus years. They take care of them. They don't want to be put in a position that they have to do something to justify increasing the rents, and therefore, rehabbing them and, making them into non-workforce housing. And this with me tonight is Rick Bendison and Todd Wilson, if you have any questions relative to the managerial aspect of this. But I think this is a reasonable approach, and I would be happy to work out the details with town manager and town council if the board is willing to consider.
So I just wanted to be clear on one thing. You said a minute ago that something would greatly exceed the privilege fee. What was that you were saying?
If you take the delta between 60%,
Oh, I see.
okay, and affordable rents, I mean, you're using that as a benchmark. It's about $500 or $400 a month per unit per month. So if you extrapolate that out times 76, times 12 months a year, times 10 years, it's going to exceed the ask on the waiver of the privilege fee. With respect to the privilege fee, we're asking to have the privilege fee waived, but we're responsible, obviously, for the connection. River Street is where the sewer bends, goes up Parker Street in the other direction. So we're responsible to do that. We've acknowledged that. And I believe, and I don't know, John can speak to it, I believe that there's a pump station that may be required also to make this work. And we'd be responsible to do that and turn it over to the town when it's over.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you. Just so some background for the board, when we've done 40Bs in the past, we often waive the privilege for the affordable units. So we're in the 25% case where of a 40B, we'll waive 25% of the privilege. That's just, there's no requirement that we do that, but that's been normal practice on the part of the board and the sewer commissioners. This is a little bit of a different case in that the the apartments already exist, right? And they're just reserving, they're all affordable, but they're just, promising for the 30-year lifetime that allows them to be included in our subsidized housing inventory, just 10% of them. So we would have to decide, are we discounting the privilege, and if so, how much? Also taking into account, as Mr. Levine said, they also have to do the infrastructure for the connection. The piping down Parker Street, maybe a pump station, I don't know. I don't think they know yet. Which would also allow, I think that would pass 2 other houses, if I'm not mistaken. So those 2 houses could hook up if they wanted to. We allow anybody that has a pipe in front of their house to hook up. It's in the bylaw. So anyway, I'll open it up to questions, comments, discussion on the part of the board, and then I'll take comments from the public. Jim.
So it seems like we've got 2 kinds of questions here. We've got a question about affordable housing, and is the cost reasonable for creating some new affordable housing? I'm going to mostly defer to the experts at the ACHC for that, but I do have some comments about that. But I think the main thing that we need to focus on is the sewer aspects of this as sewer commissioners. And what's the impact of adding, 76 units in a situation that's optional? We're not required to connect. And my concern is that even if we add the rib, the infiltration basin at Adams Street to increase the capacity, that's only enough to cover, folks that are already in the sewer district. And even that, it's a little fuzzy. Remember that bar chart was like, well, maybe this, maybe that. It's probably enough. Adding 76 new units puts us in a situation where we may eventually have to have very expensive upgrades to create, a rib that's, off the current site. So we'd have to, buy land and do all the infrastructure to get over there. So for me, it doesn't make sense. My only comment on the housing side is that, these are wonderfully naturally affordable houses, units, and I'd love to keep them that way. So I'd be sad about losing that. But the notion of putting a bunch of houses under the control of the DHCD would mean that there would need to be a lottery. So the existing tenants leave involuntarily. Then there's a lottery to determine who can move there. They move back in. Then there's another lottery in 10 years. Well, not a lottery. In 10 years, we lose the 60% protection for all the units. So potentially then we have some rent increases at that point. So we might lose some more tenants. And then of course, most of the units, most of the plans that we've supported have had, like the AHA plans, these are perpetual. These are 30 years. So that means that after 30 years, the guaranteed rents go away. So it just seems like we're moving a lot of people around for very little gain because the rents are already good. So I'm not seeing the numbers add up. That's my first take on it.
Can I just correct or address 2 issues?
Yes, please go ahead.
Number one, with respect to moving people.
Turn on your mic.
With respect to moving people out, that would not be the case. We've gone through the rents, and yes, there has to be a lottery, but just like in a regular rental project, you rent it up, and you do have a lottery invading, and then as people move out, you have a waiting list and things like that, and that's your lottery. So we're not going to be putting people out, okay? That's not the case, all right? Okay, so that's not going to happen. And, the units may come onto the SHI over a period of time, but they will come on. So when I was speaking to Todd, their turnover is what, 10 to 15% per year?
There's only one person there now who wouldn't qualify to move in under the new requirements.
But even that, we have what, about a 15% turnover per year?
30 to 35% turnover.
What?
30 to 35% turnover.
All right, so, about a third of the units turnover per year. So that, I think, I hope dispels your concern, Mr. Grant, about, that we're going to be taking existing tenants and, putting them on the street. The second thing, and I started it, but I think we had to come to the board first, speak to John, that we're willing to contribute to I&I. Okay, so in many towns that I've, dealt with sewer, either they have an I&I program to connect in, so that when you're coming in with X gallons, you're actually not taking that 100 gallons away, you're actually contributing more than 100. So I was trying to develop a formula, which you guys can use in the future, that when somebody connects in, they have to do I&I, which is it's usually a monetary contribution. In other words, it gives the town X dollars to go and, take care of the problems you have in the system. And, I know, because I've spent a lot of time on other projects, that when you have the spikes, it's a result of rainstorms. It's a result of people who have connected their drains into the sewer system. I've spoken to the engineering department, so the I&I would pay to mitigate what shouldn't be going to the system anyway. And we're willing to contribute to that. I think as a policy, and I'm not about to tell the select board what a policy should be in this town, but I think that that's a reasonable thing to say, that you have to do an I&I. I asked John if we didn't get anywhere. I mean, not that we didn't get anywhere, we just didn't get to that point. If the engineering department or somebody could develop a formula that says, okay, we're going to be putting in, I don't know, what would have come in realistic, probably 5,000 gallons a day in realistic terms, okay, that we have to I&I it for that 5,000 gallons. So at the end, it's either a net neutral or maybe even a net benefit. Again, I'm not the engineer. So I would hope, Mr. Grant, that, once you can establish the I&I and you're satisfied that's a reasonable equation, that takes care of that issue. But we're willing to contribute. I understand the issue. And I understand that, district was created. A lot of people haven't connected in, but you're kind of fluttering around, capacity. So I think going forward, the I&I solves a lot of problems for the town. And I agree that you can't just continue to, buy more land and expand, the sewer system. I know the problem. But we're willing to work with the engineering department and create an I&I that makes this either a net neutral or a net gain. Okay? All right, so.
I just wanted also to clarify a few things. What we would do tonight if we did something is we would agree on some kind of framework and then ask the town manager to come up with a memorandum of understanding. Because there's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts here with
Yes.
approval by DHCD and stuff like that. So we would ask the town manager to put together some kind of agreement that if these were approved by DHCD, we would agree to something or whatever we want to do here. Fran, please go ahead.
That actually segues into my question. And what is the timing for approval from DHCD as far as the 30-year rent restricted units contributing to our SHI?
In terms of them putting them on the SHI?
Yes.
You have to submit, a local initiative application.
Mm-hmm.
And I will never tell you what the timeline of the state of Massachusetts or the Commonwealth is, but obviously, before we hook in, we have to have the units approved.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's not, okay, it took the state a long time, but, we're going to be running this. And that's a precondition to being able to go and connecting it to the sewer, that they'll have to approve the units as qualifying under the SHI.
Cool.
And that can take a bit of time, Fran.
Thanks.
Richard.
Okay, I have a few elementary questions. So Just to clarify, we can't prevent people from requesting to make connections unless we have a reasonable question or doubt that doing so might exceed our capacity limits, right? Or
Except that this apartment complex is not currently in the district.
okay, so unless they're in the district, that counts,
Now,
but they're not
in the
okay.
past, we have let adjacent properties into the district, including just recently the Hawks Crest development. And that was the other direction from subsidized housing, right? So that, anyway, we have done that before, so we could do it again or not, right? As long as we have some concept that we're doing it in a fair fashion.
Okay, so in this case, we would be essentially providing approval to let them into the district and to make that connection. Okay, so my second question is, like Jim said, this is 76 units, and I appreciate what you had said about, thinking about I&I and ways to reduce that impact, but have we done any type of initial impact assessment on what this might mean for capacity, or is that something that would happen at like a later stage?
So I don't know if the town manager has specific numbers, but I did some numbers from just on scratch, and I figured that the discharge here might be something like 15,000 gallons a day.
No.
Okay.
Is that,
I mean, even,
is that,
no, I think it'd be a lot less.
A lot less?
You know,
Well-
it's, even if you take Title V standard, it's 110 gallons a day per bedroom. So we have 52 times 110, and then another 24 times 220, so that's, I don't know, my brain says it's about 8,000 gallons a day. I think the reality is that's the way the system was designed. I think the actual flows per bedroom in Acton are somewhere around 66 gallons a day into the treatment plant. Okay. Again.
yeah, I think you're probably right. I mean, I did it maybe a little bit on the high side.
So I think we're talking actual flows, off the back of an envelope, which I don't have.
So you're
About 5,500 gallons.
okay. Well, that might be a little bit on the low side, but I understand. So it'd be somewhere between, 1/10 to 1/5 of our existing excess capacity.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's helpful. I'm also struggling with this because as much as, us waiving this fee would be good from like an economic justice standpoint and making sure that these, units can remain affordable, I also see the issue of, how much would this be adding to our current system? And I think that there are concerns with kind of our current capacity. So that's what I'm sitting with now. And that was not in any way like an opinion in one way or another, so that's not helpful. But for me, that's, I'm like really in the middle with this one.
Mm-hmm. So just so, we discussed this during our education session. For people in the district, the case law is clear. It's kind of first come, first serve. And as long as we have to have capacity, we need to serve them. In theory, we could reject them, but in reality, we couldn't. That's what I just said. I did say that. I'm sorry. For people for people out of the district, we have often allowed them in. People who are adjacent to the district allowed them in, including just earlier this year. So, but yeah, we don't think we're required to. In this case, to me, the benefit is that we would add units to our subsidized housing inventory, which we're until the building permit is done for Powdermill Place, we're below our 10%. So every additional unit helps there. I think the alternative, if they don't connect to the sewer system, is a very large package treatment plant, which will cost them likely more than connecting to the sewer system.
So I share Jim's concern about the fact that we're eating up capacity. And normally I would say just to reject this out of hand because we're not going to have enough capacity. But I'm moved by the fact that with the Hawks Crest Reserve property that we added those on because we sort of had to. But I've been checking the real estate listings for these houses that are coming on the market, and these houses are being marketed for $1.4 to $1.8 million. So it seems like because we had to, we're providing sewer capacity for some very well-off people. And I think that maybe it's a sacrifice we have to make, that we should provide some sewer capacity for folks that are not as well off. Going back to my comments that I made at the beginning of this meeting, that, you know, we have such a hard time with workforce housing and the economic impacts of that on our town. So I haven't made a final decision, but I'm sort of leaning more towards approving this than disapproving it.
So, may I just say something? No, please, I'll give you a chance in a second. I also want to say here that what they're suggesting here is that we have a framework where they pay us a fee in lieu of privilege. And, you know, that fee is open, what that fee is open to discussion. And that fee, if used for I&I, we can figure out a number for what the infiltration is into the system and how much we can repair for $1,000. We can ask them, for example, for twice as much money in the fee in lieu of privilege into the system, and we would actually net more capacity, if that makes sense, right? Right. And I think that fee, I mean, this is a big development. There are lots of bedrooms in this development. That fee could be significant, and everybody might still benefit here, right? Because they're talking about, you know, if we didn't, if they were already in the district, they'd be paying more than $1.2 million to connect, right? If it was, we're not talking about any discount for affordable units. If they were to do a package plant, my guess is it would cost them, you know, more than that. You know, you're probably approaching $2 million or something. And then, and we could actually ask them for hundreds of thousands of dollars here to do I&I work or anything we wanted to do at the plant. And it's this kind of, the privilege money or fees in lieu of privilege can be used to kind of sustain the maintenance and capacity of the plant. So, Mr. Levine,
I think you took the words out of my mouth. I mean, I think the most established cities and towns, or many of them that I've practiced in, you know, have standard I&I without having, you know, a functionality problem. It's just they're looking forward to the future, and you know, they're not even at capacity, but they say you tie into the sewer, you have to do 1 for 1 or 2 for 1 or something like that. That keeps them from getting into the crisis mode as more and more people go on. So, as I said, I'm willing to work with town staff to develop a number which you fellows can use in the future, which I think is the way out of the woods for you and your capacity issues. You know, is I&I for anybody connecting into it, in addition to whatever fees you did about a half an hour ago. I just think it is, and you know, again, it was premature for John and myself to, you know, try and figure it out. But I'm willing to provide the engineering and the, you know, for the review by the town, you know, to save the town the cost and expense to see what that would be. There's a lot of information that I've seen, I think the board has seen, about the rainfalls and how it spikes and pushes your system right up to, I think, 300,000 gallons a day number. Yes. But then you see it graphically go down when it's not raining. So those, I know when Paul Campbell was, you know, town engineer, I mean, the connection was in illegal drains going into, you know, so it's a lot less sewer than, you know, but that's, so, but DEP says once you get to that number, I don't care where it comes from. You know, you're over.
Because the wastewater has to be processed.
It's not wastewater though, a lot of it is.
Oh, no, but it gets mixed with wastewater.
It goes to the same
It becomes
place.
wet wastewater.
Yes.
Right. Right, so, you know, some of the I&I, because they will put, you know, robots in the pipes and figure out where the water's coming from, will be tracked down. You know, inevitably, this just happens. People have some pumps that drain into the sewer, which is not legal. And so, and that's why the peaks happen on the, you know, usually this month, usually in you know, a rainy day in April. We hit the peak when the ground is saturated and we get a lot of rain. Maybe I'll take some input from the public here first, and then we can discuss it a little bit more. Is anybody in the room like to speak?
Not a surprise. Alyssa Nichols, School Street. I have to admit that my first concern was discharge capacity, but it sounds like the I&I work is going to resolve that. However, my main concern is the maintenance of the affordability of these units. And I first want to start out by saying that I deeply appreciate that this complex is here in our town, because I think that socioeconomic diversity creates a healthy community. So I just want to be clear that I appreciate that those apartments are naturally affordable. But as a sewer user, I know that the sewer rates are very high. In fact, in Acton, they're the highest in the state. So I'm seriously concerned that were these units to be hooked up to sewer, that it would be difficult to maintain affordability. And I applaud the commitment to keep them affordable for 10 years and then affordable, you know, 10% of them affordable for an additional 20 years. But I just envision that the rents are going to go up. Or worse, I envision that they will be demolished, because I think that sewering this property incentivizes demolition and creation of new construction, luxury apartments, possibly similar to what's going on in Devon's Crest, although I don't think that that is going to be a demolition, but renovation to create luxury apartments. So that's my primary concern, is that the town eventually in the future could lose these affordable properties. And it was a little unsettling to be listening to the ACHC meeting where the petitioner came to get their approval for this proposal, because I heard the petitioner say, I quote, "Tomorrow I could go rip the whole place down. I could do whatever I want to do, and I don't have to ask anyone." So I definitely applaud this petitioner for having, 30 plus years naturally affordable housing in our town, and I hope that these properties can remain affordable, and I don't think that that's going to happen if this board, as sewer commissioners, approves the connection to sewer. Thanks.
If you would like to come to the microphone, you can come to the microphone. Either one.
Hit the button. The button, Rick.
Right in the middle.
Thank you.
Can you just tell us who you are again?
Sure. My name is Rick Benditson, and I'm the owner of Parker Street. And we also, my company, Diversified Funding, has managed this property continually during our period of ownership, which is approximately 35 years. We have committed ourselves for 35 years to operate the property with the best affordable rent structure in the town of Acton. People can make a lot of promises, but the question is, do they do what they say they're doing? And we've walked the walk for 35 years without any controls from anybody, keeping this a very affordable property. Our dilemma today is that the system we have is very, very close to being non-functional and needs to be replaced. That system, if we build our own independent sewer system, is very expensive. $1.5 million, $2 million all day long. If we don't receive some help, how do we pay for that money? Well, we could renovate the units and charge more. That's just a fact. Do we want to do that? No. We're here to ask for your help. We've been here 35 years, operating the property without any restrictions from the town or the state, providing exactly what you want, what is quality, affordable / workforce housing. We want to continue to do this. We're a family business. We're not going anyplace. We're not going to do anything different. We want to work with the town. We believe this property best serves that community. There's only one person today in that property who wouldn't qualify under the new regulations if we worked with the state requirements, who wouldn't be able to rent today under those circumstances. Even that person, under the law, gets to stay under the new situation. They wouldn't have to be moved out. Someday, if they did move out, then it would drop down to the income levels. But all our residents today qualify easily for the new. So the question before the town is, and the question we have to answer for ourselves, is what do we do to raise all this money to put a new system in? So we would really like it to keep it affordable for the town and continue our commitment to the town and the residents of the town that this property serve that purpose. And we would appreciate your help very, very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Justin, can you call on the online commenters, please?
Yes. We have Kim Castens, or Castens?
Yes, thank you. This is Kim Castens from 294 Pope Road. So I'm looking at the location of this property on the map, and it looks to be right next to Fort Pond Brook. And if you go downstream along Fort Pond Brook for a little ways beyond the property, you arrive at the 7th Street well field of the Water District. So one of the very first things that the first speaker said was that the septic system is in the process of failing. And so I would suggest that there might be some special urgency about taking care of this situation, and that perhaps somebody could look into the question of whether or not there's any risk to the public water supply wells downstream. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and we have Laura Plaskin.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So my name is Laura Plaskin. I work for the Regional Housing Services Office. I also attend the ACHTC meetings as the off-board clerk, and I also live in Acton. So I just wanted to comment on, since you're going to be discussing or potentially deciding on a framework, for arranging this agreement with the owners at Parker Street, and just to clarify some of the DHCD process. We did send a memo to the planning department that included some of this, but I just wanted to mention that, so as was mentioned, the SHI units are have to be marketed through the DHCD affirmative fair housing.
I'm sorry, I'm
marketing
having a
standards.
very hard time hearing. Is there anything we can do about the
Collective
echoing?
decluttering, meaning that only vacant units could be considered, which means there have to be 8 units, submitted together to DHCD. So you would have to have 8 vacant units. It couldn't really be a one at a time thing, because you do a LIP application. A LIP application is for 8 units. So you would need 8 vacant units. And then DHCD does also ensure that the units are, in good shape and not in need of repair or upgrade. I understand that some of the units at Parker Street have been renovated. Others, I would say, are not up to DHCD standards, so it would need to be 8 vacant renovated units that DHCD would be considering. So I just feel like that's something that should be included in the framework. That was it. That was what I wanted to comment on.
Yes, thank you for that. We'll have some kind of memorandum of understanding to make sure everything goes through before the deal is closed.
As I said before, we have turnover, and so we're going to be able easily to have a lottery and have the requisite number of vacant units and get them approved, but they have to be approved by DHCD. Okay, so that's a process that we have to go through. They'll review them, inspect them, et cetera, but they'll all have to come online before we can connect in to the sewer system. If they don't come online, all 8, then we can't connect into the sewer system. So I just want to make it very clear.
Understood. Justin, can you call on the last couple of people, please?
Yes, we have a call-in user.
Hi, this is Tara. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I have a question and then some comments. My question is, would this, well, first of all, it's a request that when you say that there will be a memo, I would hope that you would say comma if this is approved, because it's not for sure that this would be approved. But my question is, will this compel, if it's passed, would this compel the other 2 houses to pay a betterment? Because if they aren't in agreement, I would think that would require a town meeting vote for the extension of the district. So I want to understand that.
So the answer to that is, since a betterment is a way to pay off a loan, since the town is not taking a loan here, there is no betterment. If those people wanted to hook up, they would have to pay a privilege fee, which we just set the rates on in the last agenda item.
Okay, thank you. So for me, I have a hard time with this because I'm very much in favor of doing what we can to make sure these units remain affordable. And I literally, I feel like you should get an award for being a hero for the work that's been done so far with these units to keep them affordable. But we've heard people come to town meeting and talk about and giving a verbal about how they plan to do this and that, and then they don't. So I feel like it really has to be in writing. For me, I feel like I would be willing to support this if there was a right of first refusal for the town to buy the property. I would hate to have this, as Alyssa suggested, enable future development of luxury condos where these are plowed down. So I believe that, and I looked at the numbers, I believe that the rents would pay for the town to own it. So that's the first thing. I have a friend who is over 80 years old in Cambridge, and she's living in a unit that's expiring a 30-year requirement, and she's being evicted to make way for luxury apartments. So this is particularly personal for me. The 1/10 to 1/5 of existing capacity, it's not actually excess, as it was indicated. The town has an obligation to provide that capacity to those who have paid their betterments. And so what will be the liability for the town regarding the ribs and the costs? I feel like that's important to consider. These are serious risks to take if the units would be only affordable for, a certain period of time. And again, I would be in support of this if it was for all 40% forever. Right now, it's first come, first served, absence of a regulatory framework which treats things differently. The town attorney prepared a substantial memo outlining this. Yes, it's first come, first served if you continue business as usual and give away this capacity. But a more fiscally and socially responsible way to have a regulatory framework that takes into considerations like community values and not leave it to the market. Because I really do fear that that's what will happen if you do not make these affordable forever and or have a right of first refusal. Actually, I'd like the right of first refusal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's it.
David, we have one last call-in user. It's called Zoom user, and they don't appear to be logged in locally. So we can call on them if you'd like.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Hi, please state your name. I've requested them to unmute, but
So why don't we just skip them, since we don't know who they are
Okay.
anyway? Thank you. Any final discussion from the, okay, go ahead.
Thanks, Alyssa again. Just what Tara said reminded me that in the past, when sewer commissioners have waived privilege fees for affordable units, those are affordable units that are kept in affordable in perpetuity. And I know that there was some calculation done about how much money is lost, $400 or $500 a month per unit. But at the ACHC meeting, it was made very clear that these units are rented at market rate. So what Laura was saying about the condition of the apartments. So I don't think that they're kept, under what they could be rented for if the petitioner is saying that they're renting them at market rate. They're getting what they're worth. Thanks.
Okay. Jim, I saw you reaching to unmute. Do you want to make a comment? We can just discuss now among ourselves what we want to do.
Sure. Well, I had one question, which might be for either the petitioner or the RHSO. There was a letter from the RHSO that mentioned some issues with the size of the units, that DHCD requires a minimum size for their one-bedroom and two-bedroom units, and that some number of these units would be below that, or all of them, or could you maybe clarify that for us?
Your microphone.
I spoke to DHC that it's not a hard and fast rule. I think that was what I was told. When I say half empty or half full, I think there are people who are trying to promote and get affordable housing, and there are people that are trying to say, well, we have all these widgets and restrictions and you can't do it. So I'm trying to be the half full guy. Obviously, I haven't come this far with my client to know that we don't have a reasonable possibility of getting this done. My client has spent a lot of time. I spent a lot of time speaking to John. I spent a lot of time with the ACHC. But, until the game is over and they turn the lights out and you sweep the floor, nobody knows what the outcome is. But I'm reasonably comfortable, having spoken to DHCD after that memo, that we can get it done. And I'm reasonably, through all the reasons that people brought up, the problem with this, and they're not going to be available, but we have turnover of 10, 20, 30%, so we're going to have vacant units. It's a linear path, that problem solvers can easily do. But the town's fail-safe is if I can't get them to be on the SHI. We've had a lot of conversation, but we go home and take our balls and bats and we try. Okay, and that's it. So that's going to be the precondition of your agreement. Okay, it's not, and the same way people mentioned, but this is not. It's going to be a written agreement.
Yes.
Okay, it's going to be filed at the registry, and it's not anything that's going to go away. All right, and I know people say stuff, but this is going to be there, and we're happy to have. And again, we can work this out with staff. We can have reporting requirements, in terms of, which I expect the town would ask us to do to verify that the rents are, 60% or lower of AMI. AMI may change. So, these are all issues that are reasonably addressable, okay? Certification, yearly, which is no different than what happens in the 40B context. Anyway, you have to certify, your rents every year and things like that. So I have no problem. The only difference is, the town may be involved more so. And again, I've heard the thing about we have to do market rate. Yeah, we have to go out and we have to lotterize this, and we're willing to pay for that. And that's it. So going into this, I went, with my eyes open and very familiar with the requirements and criteria that we'd have to fulfill.
Thank you. So we'd have a memorandum of understanding, and if it fell apart with the HCD, it would fall apart, and then we're back to maybe they'd come back when we try to work out a different deal, but we wouldn't have this deal. Please go ahead. You have a follow-up?
Yeah. My intuition at this point, after hearing all the facts, is that a better use of staff time might be to try to help work out a package treatment arrangement that would be not just for this building, but for other neighboring apartment complexes and buildings as well, to reduce the cost, because there's an initial cost for doing any package treatment plant. If it's spread out over more people, it might become within the range where it would be, it would be simpler and not cost that much more than a sewer arrangement. And that takes the capacity issues off the table, and it allows us to, I'm sure there's other units near there that are, if they're not having problems now, they will soon. So a nice modern package treatment plant might be a good solution for all of them. So my instinct would be that would be a better use of of how to proceed with this, is how to figure out how to make this package treatment plant be more affordable, so fit within because there's obviously a lot of money that, you're going to have to put into, building all the sewer infrastructure and paying whatever is left of the privilege fees. And, it's not cheap. And that amount of money might just as well go towards a thought out package treatment solution.
Okay. I heard one of you guys unclicking. Imogen, please go ahead.
I actually had a quick question. To Alyssa's point about sewer rates, can you comment about how that might impact renters in the apartment? Would they have to pay that rate, or how would that work?
Microphone, please.
I've been Zooming it for 2 years, so the sewer rate, would be assessed to the property. Right now, to maintain the treatment plant that's there, money is put in on a constant basis, okay? So it isn't like, we're running for free. I mean, we have to maintain it. And so it was just switching column A for column B, but it's not going to go over to the tenants, all right? Our problem is we're at the fork in the road, and the fork in the road is, do we spend $1.5 million, $2 million to build a treatment plant? Okay, which would definitely impact rents, okay, immediately, because that's upfront payment. Or do we come to this, board, sewer commissioners, and as the bylaw permits to promote affordable housing, ask for a waiver, of the fees in consideration of restricting our rents, all right? And so that's it. I mean, I appreciate Jim's comment about the treatment plant, same package plant, but that means we have to come up with the same $2 million to build it, and that doesn't mean that they will come if you build it. So I think our proposal is extremely reasonable, and especially, I'm the one that advanced the I&I. Nobody asked me for the I&I. In fact, I reached out to the town to see if they had an I&I formula, which my understanding is, as of this moment, they don't. All right? So that's been my experience with towns, and I would, forgetting about whatever happens tonight, I would tell Acton to implement an I&I formula, for anybody and everybody that's connecting into the sewer, because I think it's your way to get out of a jam that you're in right now, or a potential jam. All right, and I'm used to it. It's usually at least 1-to-1. Sometimes it's 1-to-2. All right, so, and again, we're happy in our framework to identify the I&I. Okay, you have Woodward and Carmen, are your sewer guys? We can go out, we can identify the I&I and say, we'll take these many gallons out of your system. All right, and that'll cost X. So I think that's a formula that can be agreed to by town staff and Woodward and Curran, and can be identified, and they can say, yeah, that'll take 10,000 gallons out a day, or whatever it will, and that'll cost so much to do it. And then you'll find about all the illegal drains that the neighbors and everybody else has, running into the system.
Thank you. Anything else, Fran? Dean?
I'm willing to make a motion at this point. I think we've heard enough, and frankly, I'm in favor of letting this conversation continue with the proponent and with town staff. You know, my basic instruction of the town manager, as it always is, get us the best deal you can. I think, John, you've heard the conversation and what the town's interests are here. So I'm not sure how I phrased that particular motion.
Well, can I just make a couple of comments first? I do want to say that the package treatment plant it's certainly not obvious that it's less expensive under any scenario, right? In fact, in my mind, I don't see how it's less expensive in any scenario, right? First of all, you have to find the place to discharge, right? And if you're going to take on customers beyond these 76, you need more place to discharge, right? And plus a framework to run it, a public utility, right? Which has been done, or private utility, which we do a couple places in town, but it's not common, right? It's one developer who's put the thing together. So I think the ongoing cost, the mortgage or whatever to pay for a package treatment plant on a per month basis is more than the sewer fees, easily. The other thing that's concerning to me, and Kim touched on this a little bit when she spoke, is the water quality, right? Our wastewater treatment plant has the best discharge water quality in town, right? And this is a big discharge site. This is many thousands of gallons a day, whether it's 5 or 15,000 gallons a day. And it's probably somewhere in the middle. That's a lot of discharge, and in a failing system, to me that's alone is a reason to hook it to the sewer system. So to get back to Dean's point as to the question, I think that we need to kind of agree to the framework. It's unreasonable to have the Parker Street Apartments folks to move forward, and then, we can't have a veto later, right? So we need to agree to a framework, and all the town manager to move forward with an MOU with some guidelines that we can give him here. Whatever we want the guidelines to be, so we could waive all the privilege, we could waive part of the privilege, we could ask that an I&I be on a 2-to-1 basis, which means, let's just say for the sake of our argument that the discharge is 10,000 gallons a day, predicted discharges, and we say that the equivalent I&I we think would cost us $100,000 to remediate. Then we actually charge twice that as a fee in lieu of privilege. So we would charge $200,000. And there's just as an example. And then, plus they would do all the infrastructure to hook up, and the infrastructure would become the towns, and we can charge privilege to anybody along the way who connects in at a later time. So I could summarize that in a sentence, but I want to make sure that you guys are okay with that kind of framework. Dean's okay. Hemija.
Yeah, I think I'm okay with that. One of my questions would be, how much would, for example, I&I offset the potential addition that this is going to bring? So I think it's a cost-benefit analysis. So I think that would be also something that hopefully town staff can help us with, is seeing how much would this potentially offset the additional sewage that would be coming into our system.
So what I would propose is that we tell them what we would do, right? So in my example, if it costs $100,000, for example, to remediate I&I to get 10,000 gallons a day, I'm suggesting that we have as Lou alluded to, a 2-to-1 standard, which gives us, it also allows this complex to kind of buy into our infrastructure that we've already have in place as well. So we would charge them $200,000, so we could either use that to remediate twice as much as they are discharging, and so that's where we'd end up with more capacity, or we can use that for anything we need at the plant, right? It goes into the sewer enterprise fund.
That makes a lot of sense to me, yes.
Jim, do
No, it's not adding up for me still, but, this is why we have 5 of us. I can be outvoted. The I&I, my thoughts about the I&I are that there's 2 things. One is that there's a limit to how much I&I can do. So it's not going to be a general strategy going forward, because we're going to be squeezing more and more out of that. It's the last little bits are going to be more and more expensive. When we had our presentation a few weeks ago, what we learned is that there's one big chunk that they're really wondering about, that they're waiting for the right rainy day when when they start getting the leaking, and then they can, send the robots down and find the problem. And there's a big fix there to be had. But we've already funded that. So we're just waiting for the right time to do it. And for me, the investment in I&I is a good one, and we should be making it. I don't think we need to rely on extra people coming in and adding 76 units to the sewer system in order to pay for I&I. We should just pay for it. It's because it pays for itself in terms of keeping our capacity. It saves us from, very expensive expansion expenses. So I don't see I&I as a good solution here. I still see it as, 76 units added in. I do have a hard time voting against this because I do want to support having naturally affordable housing. My point of view right now, after listening to the facts, is we've had this wonderful miracle for 35 years of having naturally affordable housing right there. Part of how that was done, apparently, was that not enough money was saved to replace the package treatment plant. That was not. That it was good for the fact that it helped keep the rents down, but it wasn't good in the sense that, you come to the expected end of the life of an asset that you've invested in, you should be ready to replace it, and they're not. And that's sad, especially if it means that the rents are going to have to go up a bunch. But I don't see us as having the responsibility of giving up a bunch of our sewer capacity in order to preserve this miracle for more years.
Can I ask a question? I'm not trying to be argumentative or anything. What are we saving the sewer capacity for? Right, I understand that there are people in the district that have not hooked up, but that's kind of an asymptotic thing, right? Most of them have had 20 years to hook up. They haven't hooked up, right? And we have the capacity to improve our water quality. Why wouldn't we use the capacity to improve our water quality, right? And also, I kind of agree with your point that I&I is not, to me, the money is fungible here. Whether we actually spend it on I&I or whether we upgrade a pump or allow one of the reactors to run more efficiently because we replace some components in it, or whatever we do with the money in the sewer enterprise budget is really up to us. It doesn't actually have to be I&I, so anyway, I think that's, I agree with your point, but I think that, to me, there are reasons to do this, even if it does take capacity.
Yeah, I'm mostly thinking of the users there. We've also had various conversations about, connecting up the AHA complex, connecting up some of Great Road. We have a lot of places we might want to use our capacity. And there's also places that are going to be more mandatory in the sense of that they're right next to the district or they're, in the district. Yeah, I'm torn. I don't see a good winning solution here. So if we want to not vote and try to figure it out, have more discussions with staff, I'm okay with that. But I don't see a way of supporting it now.
Okay, if there are no more comments, I'll try to put together a motion, and we'll see how many votes it gets. So I would take a motion to ask the town manager to produce an MOU with Parker Street Apartments that would allow them to hook to the sewer system with all the infrastructure provided by them, and a fee in lieu of privilege to cover twice the rate of I&I for the expected discharge.
You might want to add something about it's dependent on the DHCD certification.
Yes. Yes, that's a good point.
Can I ask for clarification? So hypothetically, if to Jim's point, we weren't able to offset, say, like I&I with the amount that's coming in, would this not move forward, or what would be that?
So, John, maybe you can speak to that?
So I think the business terms of what I'm hearing is that in order to preserve affordability for a period of time, that the state would give us credit for having affordable housing for our SHI. That would be a business term, is that whatever happens, they need to be able to make that happen as part of this agreement. So that's one part of it. Another part of it would be fees paid to the town in lieu of privilege, or in addition to privilege, however you want to phrase it, for purposes such as I&I. And we would use that funding, and the formula that we'd use potentially is based on how much we think they're going to contribute to the district, and maybe use that to calculate how much we want to ask them for a fee. But if we don't find that I&I while we're doing that work, it doesn't mean that they don't get to move forward. It just means that we need to keep working to find those little leaks and illegal discharges. So it's not, I think the fees that we're talking about is just a way to get a number associated with it. And we have an I&I program, as mentioned, that we're going to continue to try to do. Having more resources would allow us to be more aggressive with it. But I think, so that's sort of, I don't think it would be contingent on us finding that amount of gallons.
So since that motion was not seconded, maybe I'll try again and see if I can get it right. So I would take a motion to allow the Parker Street apartments to hook up to our sewers with infrastructure, all the infrastructure required to do that provided by them, and a fee in lieu of privilege equal to the cost that we have to remediate I&I at a level equal to their twice the amount of their expected discharge, and dependent on their affordable units being accepted into the subsidized housing inventory by DHCD.
So moved.
Any final discussion?
Oh, I'll second.
Oh, okay. Great. So the motion's been made and seconded. If there's no more discussion, let's vote. All in favor of the motion as read, say aye.
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 And all opposed, say nay.
Nay.
So we have Jim nay and everybody else aye. Thank you. The next item up is a presentation on the proposed archaeological bylaw by the Historical Commission. And Justin, they're going to ask you to present the slides that you have for the Historical Commission.
Maybe back there.
There we go.
I'm bringing it up right now.
My name is Bill Dickinson.
Welcome.
Huh?
I was just saying welcome.
Welcome, thank you. My name is Bill Dickinson. I'm chair of the Acton Historic Commission. This is Bob Farrar, and he's been heading up our Archaeological bylaw. So we're here to present the Historic Commission's proposed bylaw to document the town's archaeological and historic resources where they may be in danger of being lost. And if the slides could be backed up.
Slide 1, we're on slide 4.
Justin, there you go.
There we go.
Perfect, okay. So the objective of the Historic Commission is to protect and preserve Acton's cultural and historical assets, whether it be archaeological sites, historic buildings, open spaces, landscapes, or historic districts. However, there's no current methodology for archaeological resource documentation and projection. Thank you. That's why the Historic Commission is proposing this bylaw. So in eastern Massachusetts, in particular Acton, has a great abundance of archaeological resources. They're pre-contact, Native American, and post-contact colonial. The intent of this bylaw is to discover and document the archaeological resources on undisturbed land prior to development. It's not meant to stop development, but simply provide a pause for documentation if a significant resource is discovered. It is not intended to affect the typical homeowner who wants to construct an addition or install a pool, as the bylaw will only apply to larger tracts of undisturbed land. So what's an archaeological resource? It's any location or site used for prehistoric or historic periods that contain material remains of human activity.
Good. Thanks, Bill.
Next slide, please.
Bob, you want to point the mic at you?
Yeah, oh, good idea. Thank you. Bob Ferrara from Wachusett Drive in Acton. Yeah, as Bill mentioned, I was kind of given the task to run with this for a while, but a lot of good work was already done well in advance. As some of you might have remembered, back in 2008 and 2009, there was a full archaeological survey done of the town by Professional Archaeology Laboratories, Inc., a very, very good firm. And Doug Halley supervised that work. One of the key recommendations that came out of the report and the survey was that we really should have a bylaw. Very strongly recommend. And one was drawn up. In fact, it was a very good piece of work, except that it brought forward right about 2008, 2009, and some of you may remember what happened to our economy during that period, and this just went to the back burner and never got back out again till closer to 2019, when with Bill as chair, we started working on it again. I was asked to go look at the existing law, some other town bylaws, or the proposed bylaw that we had, and others, and talk to a bunch of stakeholders. And one really good idea came out of it was a preliminary survey. And so we brought that forward. And in fact, then we brought it, we came to this board back in 2020, so starting the pandemic. That was a virtual meeting. They strongly supported it and said, go do it. I mean, go refine it, keep working, and gave us access to the town council, Nina Pickering Cook, who has done a lot of work on this since. We didn't quite get it in time to bring to the last town meeting last June, the town meeting last June. However, we did bring one piece of it, and that was the funding for the preliminary archaeological review, which is basically a one-day review by a professional archaeologist of whatever met the criteria that Bill mentioned a little earlier, and we'll touch on later. And that was voted and supported by the CPA. Then we started working more closely with the planning department because we wanted to integrate tightly with the way the town does business. We've had actually 2 public forums that got a lot of good feedback, and one very extensive survey that was sent to all boards and committees, all the usual lists. So we got 178 responses. Now, some of you may know, I don't know how good that is, but I know Kristen Gouchard was pretty impressed with that amount of interest, and we'll detail a little bit of that later. Now, Bill will take you through some of the maps.
Thanks. Yeah, so next slide, please. All right, so Acton hired PAL, the Public Archaeological Laboratory, in 2009 to conduct a survey and outline the regions in the town that had a reasonable possibility of discovering an archaeological resource. And so 2 maps were created that show sensitivity area for pre-contact, and this is the pre-contact map, map and post-contact artifacts. Now, the pre-contact sites are typically located near water and on south-facing slopes. Next slide, please. And the post-contact sites are more closely tied to waterways. And both maps have significant overlap. And both these maps actually are available on the town's website. Next slide, please. So this is a map of the lands shaded in green that our bylaw would be, lands that the bylaw would affect. So this was created by overlapping both the sensitivity maps, the pre-contact and post-contact, and then removing the public land, removing the wetland no-build areas, any developed land, and also removing any contiguous land areas that are exempt from the bylaw. So again, this is the area or the estimated area that our bylaw would affect within the town. Next slide, please. So the goal of this bylaw is to better document archaeological and historical assets before they are lost. So, and the bylaw only targets undisturbed land, not lawns, not parking lots or existing structures. This bylaw is triggered when an applicant proposes a project that disturbs 15,000 square feet of undisturbed land within a high sensitivity area, or 1 acre of land within a moderate sensitivity area.
Could you just say those two things again, please?
Sure. The bylaw is triggered when an applicant proposes the project that disturbs 15,000 square feet of undisturbed land in a high sensitivity area and 1 acre of land in a moderate sensitivity area. So the maps had two tones, and maybe we could go back a slide or two slides. So we can see in the post-contact slide, the lavender is the low sensitivity areas and the purple is the high sensitivity areas. And if we go back one more slide, the yellow is the low sensitivity areas and the orange are the high sensitivity areas. So again, 15,000 square feet for the high sensitivity areas and 1 acre disturbance for the moderate sensitivity, and everything below that threshold, this bylaw does not apply to. All right.
Forward slides. And,
yeah, perfect.
The one before listed those criteria too. The 15.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It's on that.
Thank you.
Great. Now the architectural so the architectural surveys will be paid by the town through Historic Commission's CPA grant, which is dedicated for this purpose. This bylaw will operate through the town's existing permitting process, and the bylaw will operate within discrete time segments. First, the Historical Commission will determine if the visual inspection of the property or the land is required. Then, if required, we'll conduct that visual inspection with an archaeologist. If a potential archaeological resource is discovered, then the commission will work with the landowner to pursue a voluntary intensive archaeological survey. Next slide, please.
So we have 3 quick slides on the survey that we mentioned a little earlier. And I would have to credit Barbara Rhines, the new Cultural Resources Assistant, for a lot of great work on this. First, we wanted to know how aware people were. I know those are hard for you to read a little bit, but basically 1/3 of the people were quite aware. That's the right-hand side there, that there was a lot of good archaeological material here, and we have quite an interesting history. Next slide, please. This one wasn't quite so good. We asked if people had seen these maps that have been created and been there maybe a year or so now, that the ones that we just saw earlier, and really the big part of that curve was no, people didn't know they were there, but they are there now, and you can even align them with boundaries, property boundaries, so they're quite good. Nice work. Next slide. And this one too, we asked what periods are important to you, pre-contact, post-contact, and the lion's share, that's that whole brown thing on the bottom, is both. People want to know about both. Yeah, so I think that's the real conclusion of that. And then one more slide, please. on question 4. This one, we were trying to get at, should it affect homeowners? And or do we get those criteria approximately right? And the lion's share was yes. And there was, but another interesting thing was a lot of people, a significant amount, I'm sorry, that's that reddish, that said you really should go much further. And we heard that a lot in those public forums as well. Is no, don't look at everything. And well, that costs a lot of money.
Don't make any exempt property.
Nothing is exempt. And one thing that's not included here, though, these were the 4 questions that we asked, but we also had a free-form one that just a lot of people gave a lot of really good input. In fact, we spent one meeting at Town Hall in this building with Kristen and Barbara going over what came out of it, and several of them actually did make it into, I think, the final draft. They were really well thought out comments. So that's our formal presentation. Happy to take questions, whatever you need.
Questions, comments? Jim?
Great work, guys. It's so great to see this coming forward. One question I had, and I hadn't read enough through the bylaw to understand this. If this passes at town meeting, when does it take effect? And would it take effect for projects that are in the middle of being permitted? I'm specifically thinking about the large solar array that's been permitted by the planning department on the W.R. Grace site, which part of that is taking down the 20 acres or so of very young forest that have grown up in the face of the abandonment of that, historic area where, there had been industry in the past. And who knows, before that, it does appear on your maps that some of that would be in areas of high archaeological sensitivity. So I didn't know, would this impact them? And when does it take effect?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and if it's passed the town meeting, I would say anything that hasn't been finally permitted, it would apply.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that would be a question for the planning department, really, when that would be appropriate to come in.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if it doesn't apply there, you may want to approach them on a voluntary basis and say, hey, it looks like we've got some archaeological sensitive stuff there. If you could give us, a month and a half to look through it, that would be good. Because they won't be building at the earliest until 2023. So you've got a few more months there.
All right, thank you.
Dean?
Yeah, so I support this plan, and for a number of years when I was liaison to your committee, I participated in some of the early work on this, and I really applaud you for following through on it. And I'm very much in favor of it. My only question, and it kind of is tied in with one of Jim's questions as well, is the definition of undisturbed property. Considering that virtually 100% of the town of Acton, and indeed 100% of Massachusetts, was cleared at one point, turned over to cropland. Stone walls were built there by a lot of the farmers, amongst others. The definition of what is undisturbed, I'm thinking about my backwoods that were completely disturbed 100 years ago, and now they've grown into very large pine trees. Would that be considered, if I met the other criteria, would that be considered undisturbed? Where those trees just grew up, obviously, well after the pre-contact period and well into the contact period. So that the definition of that, and then by extension, the question that Jim raises, if a lot of that area at W.R. Gray's site was cleared, was part of industrial work, and then it grew back into trees and brush, at what point does something suddenly become undisturbed? And how are you going to wrestle with that? And I'm glad that you guys get to deal with that and not me.
Yes. I assume you read the definition within the bylaw? Yeah.
Land area that is free of human disturbance due to clearing, grading, paving, building, landscaping, or other site development activities. And then it lists a bunch of them.
Yeah. So, I mean, our approaches, and yeah, we do recognize that many things have been touched. I think we're trying to open the window to opportunity to discover things. And it doesn't make any sense to do a lawn or a parking lot or anything that's been recently disturbed, but if woods have grown back and it has, maybe there are some things in those areas. So at that point, we'll take the opportunity to look. If we find something, great. If we don't, we don't. But we do recognize that things are undisturbed, but within any land, there are some areas that maybe have never been touched. We don't know. But this bylaw is just opening up the opportunity for discovering our archaeological resources. And if it's full of woods, we are at this point considering it undisturbed.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was a really great presentation, and thank you for revitalizing this really cool effort. My question is on kind of the procedure if you do find that an alteration may adversely impact archaeological resources. So it says here that the commission should notify the applicant that the proposed alteration is identified as significant, and a detailed study to document any found threatened archaeological resources is recommended. Regardless of that finding, the commission should issue an archaeology permit at this time with the request to conduct an intensive archaeological survey. So my question is, in terms of like the steps that that person would take, like would they, it seems like they would be issued a permit and they would be asked to document, but this wouldn't be enforced, right? Because based on what the language
Right.
says here, it would just be recommended.
Yeah, so the overall intent is we're very quickly, we would try to get out onto the land with an archaeologist and see if there's some potential of a significant archaeological find.
Yeah.
And then if something is there, then we hope that the property owner would want to work with us to develop or explore that. But it's not mandatory. It's a volunteer, and we want to be in the bylaw because it shows our intent. But it's just on private property. We don't have jurisdiction. So, but this is to really help in a volunteer, and hopefully some owners will want to do it. If they don't, well, at least we tried. We're trying to open up the doors.
We actually were hoping for something a little stronger, but the town council steered us to, you have to take a middle path, basically, she said on this one.
Got you. Thank you. That was all for me.
Fran, anything?
No, I just wanted to say great presentation, and I'm looking forward to this being at town meeting. And I have been through many of these forums and am familiar with it, so I'm in complete support.
Okay. And thank you for your work as our liaison, Fran, and Dean before you. We got great advice from both of you. Thank you.
I just have a few questions. Do you envision that the maps will ever need updating?
Not very frequently. Certainly the pre-contact map, I don't see as it changing much, unless there's brand-new information that comes out of the archaeological community at the high professional levels.
It's conceivable, or after some research of the towns or looking at properties, there may be new information and they could be updated. But there isn't a plan to currently.
Right, so I have a little concern that if it's envisioned that the maps need updating, what is the procedure to update them? Who's responsible for updating them? Who's responsible for approving them? and recording them. So that's just kind of an issue. In my reading of this, there is no real distinction between how you handle pre-contact and post-contact investigations. Is that correct? There's a difference to how much, what areas qualify and things like that, but there's not any difference in how they're handled, right?
No.
And so for post-contact things, what's the limit of post-contact? If I took down a shed in my backyard in 1980,
I thought there was a...
and back in the woods of my yard, which is now overgrown, and I left a concrete block there.
That might be significant to you, but not to us.
But I'm not. That was a facetious example.
I know, but I think
is it 100 years hence?
What is the post-contact? It's on the map. It's on the map. The date.
Oh, 1600. You mean that date?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's after 1600.
But yeah, I think it's 100 years, or there's a year specified somewhere in the bylaw.
So more than 100 years old?
I think it's 100 years, and that's what's stuck in my mind. And then there was a debate, should it be a year or 100 years
from the date?
So I'm curious about that, right? Because
I know it's in there.
And I'm sorry about my facetious example, but
No.
it makes a difference, right? Because things that we know have been especially, and it relates to the disturbed versus undisturbed, right? Kind of, if things haven't been disturbed in 100 years, I'll just use 100 years, right?
Yeah.
Basically, I think it relates to Dean's question, because if things haven't been disturbed in 100 years, then anything that was there before is, by the definition in this law, possible of archaeological interest.
Right. And I think it's, and sometimes maybe there are things that are older that are less of interest than maybe some more modern things. And I think, again, the idea is to go out, see what's there, make an evaluation. Our initial evaluation, the archaeologist, to identify items or areas of interest. And then whatever these items are, then work with the homeowner or the property owner to see if we excavate or document or whatever it is to, make them understood as part of Acton's history.
But
So,
my question
I don't know
is,
I don't know if there's a date. I don't know if there's a real date that makes the difference. I think it's you know it when you see it.
yeah, but that's bad for a law, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't allow that for pornography laws, which is what you're referring to.
Yeah, I don't know if we have.
But in my mind, right, if I can, if a person proposing to do some development or changes or whatever says, oh, this site was completely disturbed in 1950, even though it may look like it's not disturbed, it's all grown back or something, then maybe that's not of interest. And I think we should clarify that, right? We don't want to hire an archaeologist to go out there for something that dates from 1950. If it dates from 1850, yes. But I think this needs a little bit of clarity, and I think it overlaps with the undisturbed definition that Dean brought up.
Yeah, and it may be, you're looking for a date?
Yeah, I'm looking for the date or the 100-year one.
I think that's a great comment, and we'll kind of look at that in the bylaw.
I have two more questions. Okay. In the sensitivity assessment, you say all costs for an assessment will be paid for by the town. I don't understand how that works with appropriations.
Well, we've received CPA grant money to pay for archaeologists already. Dedicated for that purpose.
And so the Historical Commission is holding a fund aside that you're going to try to replenish on a year-to-year basis with CPA funds?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine.
I think so.
No, that's fine. I was just clarifying when you said paid for by the town, and that's, in the paragraph that I'm looking at, it says, you know, it's within the 35-day window. Obviously, we're not appropriating money within a 35-day window.
Right. We have, I think we appropriated $10,000.
Okay.
It was.
Okay. And finally, I'm wondering if there needs to be an appeal process in the bylaw, right? And
That, I think it's to this board. At one version, I sometimes get confused at which version we had, but I thought we left it.
I don't think it says. If it does say, I missed it.
This is the latest and greatest.
There are 2 or 3 places in the law where it says at the Historical Commission's discretion. And I don't really object to that, and I doubt that, you know, almost always the select board takes the advice of, you know, it's the various committees in town. But if someone has a reasonable objection, I think there should be an appeal process. I don't know, just a thought from me. It's not an insistence,
Okay.
it's just a...
I know Nina has spoken to that issue, and it was either this board, oh no, it was the courts is the appeal. Because it's not fair to you folks. You're not professional archaeologists any more than we are. I think she said it's the courts, but we'll absolutely clarify that. She said that is the appeal process.
And that
yeah.
Then the town has to defend that, but yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Dean, please.
Yeah, I think, and I've stepped away from this for a year or so, but I remember there was quite a bit of discussion about the appeal, and council did weigh in on that quite extensively, and there was at least some discussion about appeals going to the Massachusetts Historical Commission. And there seemed to be, at least when I was involved with this, sort of a jurisdictional dispute between the authority of the Mass Historical Commission and the authority of the Acton Historical Commission. So I think once you start getting into the appeal process, that's when that gets much more involved. And I'm sure, Fran, you're probably more up to date on this issue than I am.
The appeal process?
Yeah.
I am not. But I knew that it was...
We'll look into, I mean, there are, you know, it's part of the permitting process, like wetlands, or, you know, and so it really sort of follows that process, and what other specific town permits are required. It would probably follow that same process for appeal, if you would appeal wetlands,
Or whether MHC would be triggered at all.
No, MHC would not be triggered.
So, but again, you say that somehow this needs to be written down. I think the or council needs to say it doesn't matter, and you know, if an in-town appeal process doesn't make any have any legal weight, then we can skip it. So those are the end of my questions, and. I think what the Historical Commission is asking us is to put this, similar to the ban the bag folks, is to put this on the warrant.
Yes.
It's on the draft warrant now, but it's not, we haven't officially added it to the warrant. So they're asking us to add it to the warrant, which we could do tonight, or we could ask for these clarifications and add it at our next meeting. Dean.
I would move that we add this to the warrant. I don't mean to step on Fran's toes. She's liaison to
No, I have
Historic right
one
now.
quick question for John Mangiarotti. As far as updating maps, and I know that you can use the GIS mapping system for the overlays for these post and, you know, archaeological areas, is that something that updates somewhere else? Do we update that? Does the town update those maps, say for flood zones, and how does that work?
Well, every data set has its own source, but we manage how it's shown on our site. So, for example, wetlands, we don't just change the wetlands. They're kind of already been delineated, and we have that in there. For these contact maps, those were created by PAL, I believe, and we wouldn't change those. We just put them into the system and have the system display them. And if they're ever to be changed, it would be through a process. We wouldn't just kind of move a line because we
Right.
thought it made sense.
Like a magical place, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so I think there's eventually going to be two things. I mean, we can definitely add it to the agenda, the warrant tonight. But for me, in order for me eventually to vote to recommend, I would need some of these questions answered. So, and maybe that requires the draft to be updated. I don't know, right? So, I'm happy to add it, but I would take a motion to that effect if someone wants to make that motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, a motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? So it passes unanimously. Thank you. And I will just send the Historical Commission a note with my list of concerns, and I also wrote down the ones I think that other members had, and so you can consider updating them and maybe be prepared when, probably at our next meeting, we're going to be voting on which articles in the warrant that the board wants to recommend or not recommend to the town meeting.
Yes, sir. So the appeal was one.
Yeah, so the things I had here is the process to update maps, for the post-contact thing. Is there a modern limit?
Yep.
Right? Is it 100 years ago, 1850, 1900, whatever? Is there an appeal process? Jim had, is there an effective date? What happens to projects in progress? And you probably should say if they're not finally permitted or whatever. And then the definition of undisturbed, which I think, to me, ties into the limit on the post date.
Yeah.
And I'll write those down for you, so you guys.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Well, appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. There's, I know this is taking a lot of work, so I'm very appreciative. Next thing is to review the town meeting article list. This is just kind of for our information, so if any member has a quick question on the scope of an article or feels that they need to follow up, we can follow up. So Mark's, I think, going to read the articles. And then basically, maybe a question can be answered now, or maybe you have to answer a question over the next 2 weeks. But we want to be prepared in our meeting on the 25th or 28th? It's 25th, to vote to recommend or not recommend the articles here. So, and I just want to say before we go into that, what I said at the beginning of the meeting, if you've submitted a citizen's petition and would like to have 5 minutes before the board next meeting, please contact the manager's office to get on the agenda, and we'll be prepared to call on everybody who contacts us. Jim.
Process question. When are we going, is it this time or in 2 weeks or when that we will assign select board members to warrant articles?
We usually do that when we recommend.
Okay.
But if you want to do it differently, we could do it differently.
Just as long as I know when it's happening, that's all.
Okay.
That's great.
Okay,
All
Mark,
right.
please.
Good evening. So as the board is aware, but also as an overview for the public, the annual town meeting starts May 16th. We plan to return to a 2-night meeting in indoor space at the high school and not use the electronic voting system. The warrant will be published on the town website May 2nd, no later. And to organize the warrant and publish it, we have this outline for your review, discussion. Right now, it's also in your packet for anybody in the public that wants to find it. Right now, we have 57 articles listed. 30 of these are proposed for 2 consent calendars, which would be 1 on each evening. And we have 12 citizens petitions this year. And just kind of some trivia, the last time that we saw 57 articles on an annual town meeting was 2013. So it's been a while. So I'll step through the articles one by one, and I'll welcome your questions or any direction as we go, or we can wait to the end, whatever you prefer. Article 1, which is continuation of the town election to choose town officers. Number 2 is the town operating budget. Numbers 3 and 4 are town capital projects, infrastructure, split into ones funded from free cash as a majority vote. The other article will be funded by borrowing, and it requires 2/3 vote.
Do we know when, between now and 2 weeks from now, we'll have the full text of these so we can evaluate them?
I anticipate having a first draft available probably after the Community Preservation Committee finalizes its article, which I believe is at its next meeting on the 12th.
Okay, so soon after the 12th?
Soon after.
It should be at least a week ahead of our next meeting. So you should have time, everybody should have time to read it.
Next on the list, we have the AB School District Assessment, and then the Minuteman School District Assessment. Next is the first citizens petition that we received, which is regarding the Woodlawn Chapel. And then we have the Community Preservation Program article.
Can I just make a point of clarification, I think, which Mark, you made earlier? If the CPC chooses not to fund the chapel, it's possible that the citizens petition may be moot. Just a point of, Dean.
And in point of fact, the CPC does not plan on funding the chapel work this year because there's just too many complications. But that will come out to you shortly. Okay. After we finalize it. We've got all the numbers, but it's just a matter of taking the final vote on that.
Okay.
Thank you. Next, we have a home rule petition that was proposed by the Acton Housing Authority and sponsored by the board, which is to ask for special permission from the legislature to change the bidding requirements for its project, a fairly standard procedure, as I understand it, in those types of projects. And next, we have another citizens petition, economic feasibility analysis, and the reason it's listed here is because it has a financial request, an appropriation request. Mm-hmm. Next would start all the consent articles that are proposed for night one. Budget transfers routinely passed over. It's just left there in case of a need at last minute. Hear and accept reports, usually on consent, certainly able to be held if there's a report to be made to the meeting. Next, we have an article that the board will talk about a little bit later, which is to change the dates of the annual town election and town meeting. And we have amend the general bylaws regarding the stormwater revolving fund to change the department responsible for it. 2 Kelly's Corner articles. One is to revise the Main Street layout, and next is to accept Community Way as a street. Both require 2/3 votes. Next is a lease.
Sorry, just a question about that one. We've had conversations about changing the name of that street since it doesn't actually have a name now. So I'm wondering about calling it Community Way in the article. Is that?
We can change the title, absolutely.
Okay. And I have forgotten where we were in that process. Did we vote to make the change?
I think we voted to make the change if we acquired the street.
Oh, okay, so there's a chicken and egg problem there. Okay. but,
Yeah, I think the name is just, it doesn't need a town meeting vote.
okay. Great. Well, that's a puzzle for you to work out, Mark, but
Will do.
if calling it Community Way doesn't seem like the right thing to do, that's all. I'm
We,
saying.
we could say, AKA Carol Spinney Way.
Right. Yeah.
Next is a lease of land, the Cowett Simeone Conservation Land. It's on town meeting because any lease over 3 years requires a town meeting vote. Next is to accept a gift of land and an easement at 180 Newtown Road. And then the very familiar articles regarding the enterprise and revolving funds, a commuter lot, the septic disposal enterprise, the transfer station enterprise, sewer enterprise, ambulance enterprise, transportation enterprise, and then the multiple revolving fund budgets all fall under one article. And then there are 4 placeholders pending potential results of negotiations.
And we would take no action on those if the negotiations were complete by the time we get to town meeting.
Right. Very standard language would be printed in the warrant and then could take any motion as needed. On to the second night, depending on how the meeting goes the first night, we are going to also request a home rule petition to modify, or John, you might want to mention what this one's about.
Yeah, this is just asking the legislature to give us the ability to negotiate residency requirements for public safety unions. Right now, it's mandated by state law at 15 miles, and we'd like to have the ability to change that.
Next is a placeholder for asking for permission or some change to the law that requires how we advertise legal notices. As you know, the publishing company, Gannett, I believe it is shutting down roughly 19 newspapers across the state. And we are looking for another paper to make our legal ads available, and there's some specific state requirements on the outlets that we might use. The next 2 are now board-sponsored articles on the ban the bag, round 2, the polystyrene ban, and the ability to charge a fee for checkout bags. That requires another home rule petition. And then we'll move into zoning articles, setbacks for reconstruction within historic districts, and accessory apartments. The planning board is having its hearing on the 19th of April regarding all the zoning articles. Next is the article that was just discussed. That will be changed from placeholder to a majority vote. And then we'll start into the remaining 10 petitions. A non-binding resolution on electric vehicle charging capacity, non-binding resolution on protecting Acton's potable water, a non-binding resolution land and tree clearing limits, another non-binding resolution on the negative impacts of unaffordable growth, amend the town charter, change planning board from appointed to elected, amend the zoning bylaw. This is also a petition to change the PCRC dwelling unit calculation. Petition to amend the zoning map of 32 Weatherby Street. A petition to mobilize Acton's climate action plan. A petition, another PCRC dwelling unit calculation. Another petition, non-binding resolution in support of changing the state flag. And then we transition into the second consent calendar, very standard articles that we've seen before, floodplain map change, that's a zoning change. The next article is a zoning bylaw change to reflect the change passed last year, changing the name of the board, except this time it's in the zoning bylaw, which will require a 2/3 vote. The last bylaw that we changed were the general bylaws that only required a majority vote. So this requires the hearing and all that. And a housekeeping change to the zoning bylaw. It's a cross-reference numbering in the bylaw. Accept a legislation to allow for payments by the town through direct deposit. And then the standard articles that we've seen every year to authorize easements, highway reimbursement, Chapter 90, insurance proceeds, gifts, grants, federal and state reimbursement aid, performance bonds, and sale of foreclosed properties. That's the list.
It looks good. Madam Moderator.
Mr. Chairman, first of all, I would like to thank you for organizing this into 2 nights. I think we should plan on that so that people can organize themselves if they have to arrange for childcare or whatever, just so that they'll know that we're not going to be like, it's 9:30, should we keep going? We'll get there and we'll stop, is what I would like to see. And just as a reminder that since there are so many citizen petitioners, that there will be a pre-town meeting the week before town meeting. We haven't set that date yet, but we will. I'm meeting with these guys tomorrow. So if you're planning on presenting, you should plan on attending. I think that's
And I think that's good. I'm already getting questions as to when your pre-meeting
Yeah,
is.
whatever the most open and available night is, probably the week before. And also, the recorded presentations at ActonTV, I think are very popular. People really can use them to prepare for town meeting. So I assume ActonTV will help us with that again this year, and that we should plan on anyone who's making a presentation to have access to that. Sometime, it would probably be before like 2 weeks before, realistic, so that the presentations can be online, a good week to 10 days before the meeting, so people will have time to review and ask questions.
Mm-hmm. If you could stay there just a second. I was wondering, Mark, have you done a little bit of an analysis to say how long each of the days is? Or you just basically divide by 2 in terms of the numbers of articles? Because for me, with all the consents on the first night and all the citizens petitions on the second night, I'm wondering if the first night is shorter.
That's okay.
No, but I'm just concerned the second night runs really late. We don't want any night to run really late.
Well, true.
So
yes.
I was just asking the question if we wanted to move 1 or 2 from the second night to the first, and what people's thoughts were. I actually like it how you have themes, right? You have the first night is themed for money, and the second night is themed for other things.
Mm-hmm. Money and other. Yeah, I mean, maybe we can talk about that a little bit and see what we think, but the general plan is when this gets finalized, people will know. Night 1 is going to be this, and night 2 are going to be other, or whatever we're going to call it.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
I'm thinking that the language of the petition articles is all frozen and ready because they've already been received, and they can't be changed.
Right.
So in terms of my reviewing some of these with, other boards, like the Commission on Disabilities wants to look through them, is there a chance that before the May 2nd, like fairly soon, we could have available the language of the petition articles online somewhere?
We can include them in the first draft warrant that comes out along with the CPC article that we'll have next week.
Great, that would be so good, thank you.
Charlie, did you want to make a comment?
couple of questions. The second night is going to be the following night, because I haven't seen any dates anywhere. Maybe that should be published so people can plan.
Yes, that was my assumption, but yes, I think we should probably state if we, it actually says in here Tuesday, the 17th.
It says so there, but it's the first time, you know,
Yeah, understood.
a little publicity.
You're absolutely right.
And is this list going to be published maybe on website?
So this is a draft list of articles. We have 57 now, we may go down to 56, to maybe 58 when it's done. And this is in the packet, published currently.
Again, so people can sort of plan the ones that they're interested in, you know, the time. And did I hear Mark say that you won't be using the clickers?
Correct.
Can I ask why?
We're just not ready with standardized protocols on sanitizing and whatnot. We know that there's no more requirements from the state, but it's just a matter of comfort level.
Well, there's a bunch of articles, not to get into it too much, that may require 2/3 vote, and I happen to know how difficult it is to get tellers. So you might, not for tonight's discussion, but just give that some attention, because, you know, you're going to have to count votes.
We definitely have the town clerk involved in that conversation.
Takes a little longer.
Thank you. And there's one online comment which I'll take, Justin.
Yes, we have call-in user. Go ahead.
No, this is Tara. My comment was from before. I'm all set. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Oh, please.
Yeah, just really quickly, is there going to be a booklet sent to every resident like last year with like the warrant articles listed?
If I understand the question, are we mailing the warrant? Yes, that's the plan.
Thank you.
Dean?
Yeah, Charlie asked the question that I was going to ask, so I'll ask it as well, is that I do think that you should carefully look at bringing back the electronic voting system. I think, you know, the sanitizing issue is probably something we should have thought about a long time ago, having nothing to do with COVID, because apparently there is no transmission of COVID through something like that. But there's probably lots of other great diseases that could be spread from person to person through those. But I think that in addition to facilitating the 2/3 votes, I think that's very important. And I also think that you know, people are very suspicious of folks watching them and having to stand up or raise a hand or however you have to do it now. And I really think that you get a more honest and clean vote if it's done in secret with the clickers. So I would request that you take a harder look of your analysis on that.
Will do.
Yeah, please.
As far as videos with ActonTV, what did that pertain to?
So in the 2 years that we had the pandemic, in order to facilitate a one-night town meeting, the moderator encouraged us to record the presentation so that we could have the live presentation be shorter.
Mm-hmm.
In order to squeeze everything into one night. And so we've now done it for 2 years to have the main articles recorded for town meeting, and then people can go to the ActonTV site and click on the one they want to get the presentation. So if you,
So do you have to coordinate with your?
I think
Sorry.
John and Mark are arranging for some dates in the end of the month to do that.
Yeah, ActonTV did offer us a few dates toward the end of April and one date in early May.
Actually, that's very tight for after the next meeting. So if you were selected to present, So there's two things. Usually one of us, to Jim's question at the beginning, there's one of us who's responsible for each of these articles. So if someone from the audience says, wants to ask the select board something and the moderator directs the question to us, the person responsible would answer, one of the five of us would answer. So we divide that up. And then for some of them, we would present if there's a presentation. So maybe we do want to go, you want to go quickly through that? At least for the consent articles?
Yeah, the reason I asked is because a lot of these are planning related, and as the liaison to the planning board, I could be liable for a whole lot of these, so. I don't mind that, but I just wanted to make sure it wasn't by default that I suddenly had, half the articles.
John, do you have a question?
I just don't know if we could go through all that right now, and I'd be happy to work with the chair on an initial pass through.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Understanding liaison roles.
We're also getting a little bit late. We're already after 10 and we're not done with the meeting. So, okay. And we still have the end date. But often if it's associated with a committee that you're a liaison to, you might very well be the question. So we just take the archaeological bylaw. If someone had a question for the board about that, Fran, you'd probably field that question. Okay. If there's nothing more on that, we'll move on to the electric vehicle charger.
Thank you. We have installed a new electronic vehicle charger at the North Acton Fire Station, which we're excited about. It's in the rear of the building. It's on the charge point system, and we'd like to set the rate for that to match what we have for a rate at the commuter lot, which is 30 cents per kilowatt hour. And if the board supports that, we would put that into effect maybe as soon as tomorrow.
Dean?
Yeah, I think the discussion we've had all along with this is that it's not the town's obligation to subsidize electric charging of vehicles, so we should make sure that we recover certainly 100% of our cost. And frankly, I wouldn't be upset if we recovered a bit more than that. Profit is not a bad thing for the town. We can always use the revenue. I think it's also something that we could always put it aside in a separate account to be used to provide more of these. So if 30 cents seems to make sense from the financial people, I'd be in favor of that. Nobody subsidizes me when I go to the gas station, and I don't expect that anybody should subsidize an electrical vehicle owner when they go to one of these charge points.
My only question, John, is in coming up with that number, did you pay attention to the way that everyone's electricity is about to get more expensive? I mean, we've seen the big, 50% increase in the Eversource delivery supply rates, and we don't know what our increase is going to be, but it could be substantial.
Well, no, I mean, our approach with this one is just to set a rate because it's a new station and it's online, and it's right now, I think I don't know what happens. Maybe you can't use it. But I think we're going to look at all the rates as needed. If the structure changes, it becomes more costly than we think it needs to be. But so that would apply to all the ones that the board has already approved. So I think we'll look at the whole group when rates go up. Hopefully they won't go as much.
Okay, I mean, 30 cents, our electricity is costing 20-something cents, so it's more than it's costing us. I would say in terms of fees, just with respect to what Dean said, I think with fees, we're actually required by law to have our fees, match somewhat the actual cost. We're not allowed to use them as profit centers. But maybe this isn't a user fee. Maybe this is a something else fee, but.
Yeah, there, in addition to the electricity, there are costs to be part of the charge point system. There's costs for maintenance. So we're not making a ton of money here. We're just trying to provide a service.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I think that's what we discussed last time, is that we wanted to cover the cost. We do have two different ways to do it. One is by kilowatt hour, which is the method we used at the train station, because people might charge their car and they're not going to be back for 9 hours. But the method we use, and their car might fill and then stop charging. With the method we use at Town Hall is by the hour. And that's so people don't camp here, right? And that's very common. And so in some cases, the camping charges are higher than the charging charges because you're just taking up a space that someone could be other thing. So we have two different ways of doing it now, and this proposes that we use the train station way at the fire station. But in both cases, they cover costs. I know when I go to visit, I go to visit my daughter in Vermont, I charge my car. I'm appreciative to be able to go into town and the library in that town and, charge my car. They happen to, if I'm late, they bump up their fees. So my car gets done in the middle of the night and I go there first thing in the morning and unplug it because they're charging me. So I would take a motion to approve the 30 cents per kilowatt hour rate for the fire station charger.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Dean moves, Fran seconds. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? It passes unanimously. The next thing is just kind of an announcement of who we're naming for our Francis Faulkner Award. If you're ready, I'll just go down everybody. This is not, you don't need to say here, have a defense prepared or, a reason prepared, because we'll have remarks on the day of the awards presentation. It's just a listing of the names and who gets invited to the award presentation. So someone want to start? Jim?
Sure, I'm thrilled to nominate Shuang Kong.
Okay. Dean?
Also thrilled to nominate Charles Cadlick.
Okay. I'm nominating Kara Wilson Cook.
I'm nominating David Hahn.
And I'm thrilled to nominate Leela Ramachandran.
Okay.
Leela Ramachandran.
Ramachandran, I think. Okay. Next thing is covering the Eagle Scout Courts of Honor. There are three coming up for Troop 32 on May 15th, May 22nd, and June 12th. We usually have a select board member present on those. Dean went to another one recently for another troop. Was that Troop 1?
Troop 1.
Yeah, and I can cover one of these. I think I can cover any of them. I don't know if anybody wanted to volunteer. I'm happy to fill in if people have, particular dates that they can or can't.
I'm also available on all three dates. Happy to do whatever is helpful.
Okay, I would take the first date of May 15th. Jim, you want to choose one?
What's the next one, the 22nd?
22nd.
Sure.
And then do I have a volunteer to cover June 12th?
If either of you haven't done it before, I'm happy to coach you through it. It's really easy and fun.
Need coaching.
Yeah.
June 12th.
Okay. Great, thank you. Discuss change in town meeting and election dates. So we discussed this last summer, right after town meeting, when we set the date of this year's, or we talked about setting the date of this year's town meeting. I think we actually did set it a little bit later. And we talked about a couple of things that having, so we can set the date of town meeting, the select board can. We cannot change the date of the election, though, without changing the town charter, I think. It's either charter or bylaws, but I forget which. Okay. And then we discussed at that time moving each thing out a month. That puts our town meeting a week before Boxborough's town meeting, which I think is, first of all, good not to have them on the same date. And I think there's some logistical advantages to having Acton go first for the school district assessments and things. So the wording in the packet and what would be in the bylaw would propose the last Tuesday in April for town elections going forward, and the first Monday in April for town meeting. Sorry, first Monday in May. Thank you, Charlie. And if people are, I'll take any comments or on that, and then if everybody's in favor, we just vote on that, it'll go into the warrant. Charlie, I'll let you comment first.
It also avoids every 7 years having town meeting on April Fool's Day.
Sorry, just to clarify. Sorry, I zoned out very, very briefly and did not get all of it. So the first Monday in May is for town meeting, you said?
And the last Tuesday in April is the proposed date for the election.
Okay, got you.
And, but Boxborough's is the second Monday in May.
Okay.
So we would, first of all, avoid them. There's been issues in the past when we've changed the region, just made an amendment to the regional agreement or something like that, that it's actually good not to have them at the exact same time. Sometimes we've actually done it on purpose for certain things at the same time, but it's where people in both town meetings are texting back and forth as to what's happening. But anyway, that's the proposed.
Got you. And then in terms of like venue availability, would first Monday in May work out better for like, you know, reserving like places in the high school for this, or?
I think we've had discussions with them.
Yeah, I mean, the schools, I think the school district representatives were one of the people that were encouraging us to do this, so I'd hope that they'd make their facility available to us to hold the meeting.
Great. Sounds good to me.
Yeah, Mark?
Yes, this pulls it back away from, a little further back from graduation and a musical that they do at the end of the school year.
Right.
Oh, good, okay.
So, and May is actually a good date because it gives us a little bit more time to prepare budgets, get an idea of fourth quarter numbers, and it's not so late that if something didn't pass, right, if, you know, the town operating budget didn't pass, we can have another town meeting in June to figure that out, right? So it's not, you know, so we don't hit a wall. So I would take a motion to approve the last Tuesday in April to have town elections, and the first Monday in May to have town meeting, and to add that warrant article to this year's warrant.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Go ahead.
Just a brief friendly amendment. Just because this language is very particular here, it says the Tuesday immediately preceding the first Monday of May in each year, which may not be the first Tuesday in May. If, for example, it was Monday, May 1st, it would be the last day of April for the election. Or no, it would be even earlier than that, because it's, oh no, it would, no.
Last Tuesday.
Yeah. What am I thinking here? If it's if the first Monday of May is the 7th, this is the edge case. First Monday of May is the 7th, the election would be on the 8th, not on the 1st.
So why don't I change my motion, since it wasn't seconded anyway, to adopt the language in our packet that moves the dates of the town election and town meeting out by a month.
Second.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye, passes unanimously. consider approving a charge for Human Services Committee. Fran?
So I have it. I have no computer,
Oh, no more power?
no more power. Should I read it?
I don't think you need to read it.
Yeah.
Maybe you can just discuss it and what you hope this will do, and it was in the packet, so everybody has presumably read it here.
So it's on DocuShare for anyone to see. With a lot of the discussion around a town tenant advocate, it's sort of morphed into maybe developing a human social services committee to kind of weigh the needs of the town in this regard. And I'm happy to discuss with anyone if you've read the charge. I know that with the help of the town manager, we've kind of modeled from, another town who is doing this already. And this is really based from the town services perspective.
Questions, comments? Yeah, Dean?
So, I guess one of the questions I've got is, what is the problem is there a problem, and what's the name of the problem that we're trying to solve here? Are there documented cases of needs not being serviced? Is there a lack of capacity on the part of town staff to carry these matters out? And also importantly, do you envision that this Human Services Committee would in some way usurp the statutory authority of folks like the Council on Aging and the Veteran Service Officer?
I haven't thought about that, but I would really like this committee to be, include those members, if that's possible. I think the Council on Aging, even DEIC, when that person is hired, should have a seat at the table, as well as Veteran Services. I think they're all important players, even Commission on Disabilities, ACHC, AHA, even Acton Nursing Services, the Board of Health. Those are a list of the few players that I thought would be helpful.
So trying to get to how the committee would conduct their work. You've described town staff members, professionals. You've also described a number of presumably board and committee members from town, and conceivably folks from either a housing authority or non-governmental agencies that might be included in this. So is it truly a committee that would be vetted through the volunteer coordinating committee and approved by us, or is it more of an ad hoc task force that you've got envisioned here?
I was thinking more of a town committee being vetted by the VCC. I think that the town manager already has a task force committee set up, made up of different town services, police, et cetera. I think this would serve a different purpose and recognizing where we're lacking, which includes mental health, needs of tenants, all of which we've heard on any given select board meeting. And I think it's recognizing where we're lacking.
So to get to sort of the nitty-gritty of how this gets done, and you suggest 9 members. And one of the questions I would have that would sort of be fundamental when you're setting this up is, if you're including town staff in this group, would they be advisory members, or would they actually be voting members of this committee, which would conceivably be more than 9 people? And I see the manager wants to.
John, you want to comment on that?
Yeah.
And thank you, those are all good questions. And this was, Fran and I, we worked on this as a draft charge for the board to consider and get input on and adopt when you're ready. But I think there's certainly some discussion points as has been already been raised. But just to bring it back, I think part of this charge here is responsive to the goal that was set by the board earlier this year. I'm just trying to find the actual wording of it, but it was something about, goal number 8, form a social services committee that can explore a team of therapists and social workers in an effort to increase mental health resources available to the community. So this goal number 8, I see this as being responsive to that and setting up an infrastructure. And I don't envision town staff being on this committee. I think that, the way it's written here, it says 9 members appointed by the select board, 5 at-large members, which would be anyone in the community that you want to put on here based on what you're looking for, and then 4 designees from Council on Aging, 1 from the Council on Aging, 1 from Council on Disabilities, Commission on Disabilities, 1 from the Nursing Advisory, and 1 from Recreation Commission. We don't really have an overarching Veterans Committee. Otherwise, we would want them on there too, but there just wasn't that. There's no committee in place for that. And I'm not really comfortable having James be on a committee like this.
Is there any committee, is there an advisory role, like Dean was suggesting? Is that a possibility?
No, well, just like with the Public Works Committee that was just created, there are a bunch of staff that are going to help that committee do its work, but they're not members of the committee. They don't vote. They don't necessarily go to every meeting, but they're there to help, like everyone is. So I think, all the human services folks would be included in that. Our office would be available to help this committee. But in terms of, some of the things that I think could be helpful from a committee like this are some focus and some direction on resources and coordination. I think we all do a really good job of coordinating. As mentioned, there's collaboration, there's collaboratives, there's working groups, but there's not an overarching entity other than the select board to sort of give policy direction on things like some of the trust funds that we have that are available to support people, how those are spent. Those are all decisions that have been made. There's the Elizabeth White Fund that has a committee member or 2, but I think that things like that, I see this group helping set the direction on. And when an issue comes up to the select board, for example, it could be deferred to this committee for further study rather than be before this board on a regular basis. So those are some of the things that we tried to get to in this charge. And, again, the numbers, the people in here, I think that those can be changed, but those are the general things that are in here.
Did you want to follow up?
Yeah, I applaud you. I think this is a good idea. I'm just, trying to get some details and figure out the exact bounds of all this. One of the things that I would think would be really important for this committee to take on, and John's done a pretty good job of already with the latest issues, is just letting folks know what kind of resources are available out there. They're on the website. There are lots of different ways you can do that. So maybe having the citizen committee out there as well will help advertise the fact that these resources are available. And we might not have to create a lot of more resources, it's just a matter of connecting folks to the resources that are out there. So, from that point of view, it seems like a pretty good idea.
Imogen.
Thank you. Fran, this is incredible. This is, something that we had mentioned at our goal-setting meeting, and to see it actualized is really cool. And thank you to the town manager for his help as well. I think that from what I had read, I think it looks good. It's broad. enough that it allows the committee, once it's formed, to do its own goal setting. And I think that that's a really key component, because based on what the committee decides to study, I think that that's, you know, as long as it falls under the general scope of what we're hoping for through this, I think that sounds good. You know, I would also say that just kind of like reading through it and kind of also based on your comments, I think that even though we've heard piecemeal evidence kind of through the weeds, through, you know, public comments that we've heard, through, you know, the work, for example, of DEIC, we have some semblance, and also the Renters Advocacy Group, we have an idea of what unmet needs are there in the community, but I think a committee like this would be really valuable because they could also provide that base knowledge that we need to start making these decisions. So overall, I just have good things to say. I think this looks really good, and thank you again. Oh, cool.
Jim, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm reading through the goals and priorities here. I'm very comfortable with it. I think it does provide some concrete things for the committee to do. For example, identifying and suggesting services and initiatives that are needed that might be met either by the town or by public-private partnerships or by, you know, supporting the work of, you know, an existing organization like the United Way. The other thing I see them doing is hearing from the different departments and learning about all the ways that, you know, human service needs find their way to the town. I mean, what we learned from the chief of police is that they have become in some ways a human services department because, you know, when things get bad enough, that's when the police get called. So they know a lot about both in general and in particular, you know, where people are getting hung up. So, you know, I think there's a lot of learning and coordinating to do there that would be great to have in a public setting. It also gives, there's the other part here about as the committee learns, you know, how things are working and at the different ways in which they coordinate, there's a job here about recommending funding and best practices to the select board and town meeting members. So there's a chance for them to say, hey, you know, look, there's some overlap here or there's a gap. You know, and you know, let staff and us know about it.
Great. Yeah, I think this is a very good idea. The important part to me is that it kind of takes a unified approach to our human services, and is for the points that Jim just made about, you know, looking at costs and also for effectiveness, you know, can bring together. You know, the points of view of our various services. I would suggest just this one sentence be added. A quorum will be satisfied with a majority of members currently appointed. That should be in all advisory committees. All it means is that, you know, with the way this is the town council tells me that the default is that it's by the number of members that are constituted in the charge. So it would always require 5 members to be a quorum, even if you only had 7 current members. And that sentence that I said means that if there are 7 current members, a quorum is satisfied by 4 instead of 5, which is just easier to get, right, if people are busy. I don't think it needs to be said in this charge because it's implicit that, you know, the members will come through the VCC. With like almost every other long-term, I think every other long-term committee we have. And then, John, I just wanted to ask, do you envision having any staff at these committee meetings on a regular basis?
Well, you know, we don't really have, to be part of the committee, no. To help, to support the committee as needed, of course, certainly to present about each, you know, staff member's job, but I wouldn't want to just send a group of staff to every meeting to be there. But we would certainly provide support as we can.
Yeah, my only thought here is that they may not need to be at every meeting, but to have a staff point of contact
Yeah,
might be good. So just as something for you to think about. I mean, I don't think we need to put it in the charge or anything. So it could just make the committee more effective, I think. I'll take public comment now. So Charlie, you're here. You go first.
Yes, I would suggest that you check with the 4 committees that are supposed to send representatives to see what their suggestions would be. It's been pretty difficult to find people for committees. As you know, there are lots of vacancies. It's also difficult to find an evening. We need another day in the week or 2, really. I mean, seriously, it's the practical aspects of putting together a committee with 9 people and having more than 3 of them show up is not an insignificant problem. So since I don't think there's any big rush on this, I would check with the Council on Aging and so forth to see what their idea of how this may work. Because they're supposed to send a representative. What happens if there are no representatives? Does the committee still meet? You know, what's the quorum? All these questions. It's not necessarily a bad idea, but we have a lot of committees and not enough volunteers.
Thank you. To Charlie's point, I assume that the remaining members from those 4 committees, kind of a seat is reserved for them, right? So if someone resigns, there could be an empty seat for a period of time. Other comments or?
Just a couple of points. As the liaison to the VCC, I'm happy to report that in the last year, we've had a lot more people come on to boards than have left. So, so the national trends and the Acton trends don't always apply. We seem to be in an uptick recently, and that's a good thing. The other thing is that, Fran, you started this description by noting that, one of the things that brought this back up to the surface after it was a select board goal was, the work of the tenant advocacy groups. So I don't think, I'm going back and forth on whether to suggest an actual language change to include that. I don't think we need it, but I think it should be clear that it would be a helpful thing to have a tenant in this group. Just saying. I don't think we have to have that written in as a rule, but I think it would help connect, this work with the tenant work that, is ongoing now.
Another possibility might be to maybe not reserve a seat, but to list in the goals and priorities issues for renters or tenants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought of that. I just couldn't find a good, because there's so many things that we want to cover. I thought if I started including renters, the list would go on and on about all the other groups I don't want to leave behind either. So I wasn't sure what to do with that, but I was left with the sense of not adding it, but making sure it was said out loud in the meeting. It'll be in the minutes, and we can, act on it when we start appointing people.
People will look at this a couple years from now and not remember that it was in the minutes. If we think, the only thing, obviously, it is just an important thing currently. I mean, we on the board hear a lot from this, and I wouldn't object if there was a 6th priority or goal on renters. John?
So I think if there is a need emerging, I think it's addressed under item 2. And, there's a lot of other, as mentioned, there's a lot of other needs, and that's one of them, but there are several.
A needs change.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Okay, any other comments? I see none. And do we want to put in that statement that, about the quorum will be satisfied with the majority of the members currently appointed? Okay, in that case, I would take a motion to approve this charge establishing a Human Services Committee with the addition in the charge of the statement, a quorum will be satisfied with the majority of members currently appointed.
So moved.
Okay, Fran moves, and
I'll second.
Jim seconds. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes unanimously. And two more things. Item 13, well, three more things, including consent. The legal advertisements issue.
Yes, so we received notification from the publishing company for the Acton Beacon that their last print edition will be the first week of May. We thought it would be good to notify the public that, you know, we're going to have to start publishing another place. If you're interested in legal notices, we notified folks that the only available option at our fingertips was the Lowell Sun, although it's not clear how many people subscribe to the Lowell Sun here. The way that Mass General Law is set up, it needs to be a newspaper in circulation that you publish it in, and you also need to publish it in their online, the same newspaper's online searchable database, which was a standard that the Lowell Sun meets. And so that's how we made that decision. There's been several suggestions about other ideas. The Boston Globe, for example, Action Unlimited, which is a weekly flyer that people get in their mailbox. It gets to almost probably every household in town, so it's a pretty cool idea. But as of today, we don't believe that it meets the Mass General Law requirement for legal posting. So if it did, that would certainly be an avenue we'd explore. The cost, you know, their cost structure is competitive to the Acton Beacon. One of the things that's unfortunate about this change is that going to the Lowell Sun is going to cost us more. All the departments that have to advertise are going to have to spend a little bit more now
To reach fewer people.
To reach much fewer people, right? So what we're doing three things, right? We're notifying the public about what we're doing, which is the notice that went out last week. It got a lot of buzz actually on Twitter from journalists and ex-journalists and people curious about the whole newspaper industry. So we're doing that. We're actually working with town council on a home rule petition proposal for the board to consider, which would allow us to advertise on electronic advertising platforms exclusively, only. And we're also tracking other legislation that's being proposed to do the same. My understanding is that there are two bills proposed, one by the representative from the Bedford area, and it has not left committee, or it's in committee. So we feel, unless we hear otherwise, that a home rule petition might be our best opportunity to implement a change here. So that's our update. If there's any questions, please let me know.
Do you need a vote from us to put the home rule petition article on the warrant?
Yes, please.
Okay, just any final comments before we take that motion? Dean?
Yeah, a few people have reached out to me about this, and I don't think they realize the complication with the newspaper having to have a digital presence as well as the printed presence. So that, is a real problem for Action Unlimited. One of the things that I would recommend, regardless of what happens on this, is is there a way to update the town's website so that it's a little easier for the folks that don't want to subscribe to any of these newspapers to routinely go to, one spot to see where the legal notices are right across the board, so that, whether it's a planning board legal notice or conservation or whatever, they can go to that one spot and kind of grab the tidbits easily.
Yeah, I guess that's a fourth thing that we're doing. We're looking at that as, the public hearings are easy. They're all on the town calendar, and we could separate that and make a page to just show all the public hearings that we post. Where it gets complicated is the bids, which we have a bid section. So we can do some IT magic and try to figure something out, but that's definitely a good suggestion that we're also looking at as a fourth action that we've been forced to take by the changes in the newspaper industry.
Jim?
So wandering into the Acton Pharmacy to, see what papers were available, are any of the surrounding towns' Gannett newspapers surviving the May 2nd slaughter? Concord Journal, the Maynard paper, because those are available, they are online, and I assume the prices would be pretty much the same as the Acton Beacon, because it's all the same, the same evil beast is setting the prices.
As I understand it, there were all weekly publications that are ending. The dailies are still continuing, and they made recommendations as to what papers to move to your advertising, which in our case was the Sun.
Mm-hmm. Yes, go ahead.
So if we have to go with Lowell Sun, can we also post online on the Beacon? And if so, how much more of a cost would that be? What's the difference between the cost for online versus printing?
I think we could definitely post in many places, including the Beacon online, assuming they're still running that site.
But it adds to the cost. So it's already more expensive to put in the print in the Sun and then to add an additional cost to go in the Beacon. It's certainly something we could do. It would just increase the cost.
Is the Globe just outrageous?
Well, to give you an example, let's see, we did a bid advertisement in the Beacon, which was 136 lines, and we had to run it twice, and it cost us $600. To do the same in the Globe, it would be $1,600. So, yeah, it's more expensive. It gets to more people across the New England region. But the point of a lot of these things is to try to give people information about things that are happening in the community. And unfortunately, our options are limited with printed digitals, but we think we have some pretty cool electronic ways to do that.
I think if we improve the website, that's, where people can find them. I think more people would find them that way. It's too bad that the Globe is so expensive, because I think that's probably really, maybe even more than the Beacon, the most read paper in town. I would take a motion to add an article to the warrant to request a home rule petition to allow us to advertise digitally.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
So Dean moves and Himmages seconds. Seeing no further discussion, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes unanimously. Finally, discuss the wastewater solutions for Great Road. Mr. Manager.
Thank you. So, during the discussion of the American Rescue Plan funding projects, the board voted to support moving forward on a wastewater solutions study. If you recall, this was based on the rapid recovery plan that we did to help businesses coming out of the pandemic and try to plan for ways to make them even more successful. And the Economic Development Committee really strongly came out. They came to the meeting, I believe they wrote a letter, and they really wanted the board to pursue wastewater solutions for Great Road. And I think in the amount that we identified was $400,000, because it would have been feasibility up through, whatever comes next, some early design work. And so that was brought to the ARPA discussions. The board ultimately decided to allocate $100,000 in '22 and then put the rest in reserve to be discussed and thought about later. And so we started working on wastewater solutions RFQ, and then later that year, which should have been December, a few months ago, the RAC, which is the Water Resources Advisory Committee, brought to the select board its idea for a scope for the water study that was approved, I think, in 2000. It was approved a few years ago, and money was set aside, I think, in 2019. And so that scope was then approved by the select board. That you said it was a good idea, included half a dozen things related to water resources. And as we were finalizing our plan for the RFQ, I said, hey Corey, why don't we talk to RAC and see if they want to add their water study as an alternate to our planned wastewater study, just because, you know, wastewater people are usually water people and they're all in the same building. There'd probably be some economy of scale, going with one engineer or consultant and having them work on some of the standard stuff that they need to figure out for the town, and then go break off and do the two projects. And so we went to the RAC, they met a few times to discuss it. They thought it was a good idea. And we are just about at the finish line here with the RFQ. We'd like to publish it next week. And I just wanted to make sure that the board was comfortable with the idea of doing the wastewater study as the primary study and having the water resources study as the ad alternate. And the reason for that is partly financial. There's only $40,000 available for the water study, and we have $100,000 available for the wastewater study. If we combine those two efforts, and we don't have enough money to do either of them, I think it would set the whole thing back. So I'd rather have a defined scope and cost for each part of the project, the wastewater project and the water project, so that we know we have up to 40 for that one, up to 100 for that one. And part of it, and so that's sort of the plan, and which I just want to make sure you're comfortable with doing that. We've prepared a RFQ that has that strategy employed, and we've prepared one that kind of just pulls it out so we can go out on the street either way.
Comments? Major.
Thank you. So just to provide a little bit of context from RAC's side, so RAC has been working with the town manager, as John said, to essentially put together this additional scope of the project. So they've went through multiple iterations, and personally, having heard their thought processes, and personally, I think that it is a very important addition to this. It certainly takes this, project that we're planning for analyzing wastewater on Great Road and looking at it from a feasibility standpoint and an implementation standpoint, and thinking about it, with this additional layer from a sustainability point of view, which I think is an important framework moving on. So what RAC has been doing is they have a meeting scheduled for the 7th where they'll be looking this over. Andrea, who is their staff point person, I believe also plans to be there. And the final draft, I believe, is scheduled for the 11th. So town staff is hoping to finalize this by the 11th, and are hoping to get RAC's comments before that, for that final round of revision.
Other comments?
Just a question, John, because I don't know much about how purchasing works with bids. So those 140 numbers, are those public numbers, or are we just simply asking for bids and then knowing that we can only, take up to a certain amount?
Yeah. So there's different ways you can do it, but in this case, what we're doing is we're saying there's funding available up to 100,000 for this, and funding available of up to 40,000 for that. And then they may come in and say, I can do it for 78 and 35 or whatever. Or they may just go all the way to the top and say that's what it's going to cost. And the RFQ, the focus of the RFQ is to really focus on their qualifications. The amount of money we have available for both is kind of the constant, and what we're evaluating is how qualified they are to do the work. And so that's really what we focus on.
I guess the reason I ask is it seems like either one of these tasks is going to be more expensive than the money we have. And we do have this extra money No, not that it's extra money lying around, but we did say that, oh, this study is actually going to cost, if we got all the way through design, more like 400,000. And certainly, and that's just on the wastewater side. On the RAC side, I mean, you know, the scope sounds like a miniature version of the Comprehensive Water Resource Management Plan, the CWRMP, which was, you know, like hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I'm not sure how much smaller the amount gets when you, you know, when you limit it to Great Road. You still have the same questions. You got to research, you know, what are, you know, what, you know, what are coming in, what are going out, what are quality risks. So the reason I was asking about whether the amounts are there is if we get, is there a possibility of getting a bid for this work that we would say, wow, that seems like a really good bid, but it's more than we want, it's more than we had initially set aside. Is there a way of going back to the ARPA money and working with the board to say, you know, to liberate a little bit more of that money to get more of the work done?
The way that the RFQ is structured, it actually says in there somewhere that future work may be added to this by amendment or by a separate agreement. So we're putting the consulting community out on notice to everyone with the opportunity to bid it, to put in for it, that this could lead to other work, whether it's additional phases for wastewater or additional work for water resource study. So I really feel that we need to move and make progress on both of these efforts, and I think I want to move forward and have this initial work completed, and then, you know, it would be great to come back to the board this summer or whenever it decides to take up ARPA to say, geez, we had 100 set aside. We've learned that if we had a little bit more, we could do more, and you could discuss it at that point. But I'd rather get going now rather than try to figure everything out.
So yeah, I'm comfortable with this, the original scope and an ad alternate. I think that the comments from RAC were more at the level of detail that, you know, typically we worked out at the staff level. You know, some of the languaging about, you know, how do we not presuppose that sewers are the solution? How do we, you know, make sure that we're, you know, looking at, you know, shared package treatment plants or, you know, other kinds of solutions. And I think that's the sort of stuff that we don't need to get too involved in at the board level, as long as you know that, you know, that the general intent of the board was to have a, you know, a wastewater, a look at the system that might include sewers. And I think there are other points we're also relatively technical about, you know, you know, are there two engineers or one engineer because these projects are different or the same? And, you know, I don't have any expertise in that area, so I'd be happy to have you work it out with RAC.
Yeah, I think it's a cool opportunity because most of these big outfits have a sewer, you know, a water division, a sewer division, a stormwater division. And, you know, we could get to them and say, give us a project manager and use your experts in each of those fields to give us a great work product. So I think it's a good collaboration. And I was excited that RAC was interested in doing it. It's just, I want to make sure that we don't keep talking about it for another 6 weeks or months. I want to do it. That's kind of my point.
Yeah, I'm fine with the way this is going and with the add alternate. You know, I think the RAC's role here is advisory, right? I don't know of any case that the advisory committee has, you know, written in an RFP or an RFQ. So that's really the town's thing, but it, you know, but I'm, you know, I think it's fine that they put in comments for it. But I think it's comments, not edits, right? So.
They have a lot of expertise on that group. I mean, they have people that are actually consultants and engineers, so it's great. It's great feedback, certainly.
Okay. Good. You don't need a vote from us. It seems like we're in support. Everybody okay with the ad alternate to the wastewater study to take in the
I would love a vote, actually, since you asked.
Oh, okay. So I'll take a motion to support the study with that alternate for wastewater and Great Road and water quality issues.
So moved?
Second.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Last thing is consent, and I'll read the items. Item 15, approved meeting minutes, March 17th and March 21st, 2022. 16, approve executive session minutes, March 15th, 2022. 17, committee appointment, Robert Mackin, Associate Member, Land Stewardship Committee. 18, accept gift, Planning Division for $21,260 from Commonwealth Properties Group towards the sidewalk fund as stated in the Planning Board decision number 19-06, condition number 3.3.1. So I would take a motion to approve consent items 15 through 18 inclusive.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
So motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it unanimously. And lastly, I would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
So all in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Good night.